Well, a very good morning to you, Nigeria. Welcome back on our May 29th halfway mark special broadcast here on News Central. My name is Mazino Appeal.
And I am Joanna Mustafa. If you joined us earlier with the Breakfast Central crew, then you know today isn't just another Wednesday. It is 730 days report card, 2 years into the Tinubu administration, and the questions are louder than ever. Oh, you bet they are. Now, this morning, we set the tone talking about promises, performances, and also, of course, plenty of pain points. And now we're going to be digging even deeper. Today, we're looking at the beating heart of governance, the economy, security, and also energy. The big three that touches every single Nigerian life every single day. Let's be honest, the pressure is real. Food inflation just crossed, it reached a peak at 40.5%. The naira has danced around 1,500, 1,600 to the dollar. And for many Nigerians, basic survival feels like a luxury. Very unfortunate that insecurity hasn't taken a break either. From mass kidnappings to rural banditry, some parts of the country still feel like conflict zones. And while reforms have been announced, the question remains, is there relief in reality or just rhetoric? Then there is power, or should we say the lack of it. Despite spending over 2 trillion naira post-privatization and much publicized reforms within the sector, we are still seeing problems around accessibility, availability, and affordability. How are they being addressed? Dangote Refinery has come through as well as regards energy and the price of petrol. We're seeing that it has peaked. It has obviously experienced some sort of hike in the past, and we're seeing some intervention of some sort. Well, not the Messiah we were hoping for. It didn't bring the price down. Today's conversation isn't just about statistics. It's also about the lived experiences of Nigerians, the wins and also the wounds, the reforms and the realities, and yours and mine as well. So I guess maybe before we welcome our guests, we should get personal. How have you survived the past 2 years? Well, it's a lot of adjustments, right? So much has changed. Anything changed? So much has changed. From day one, it was an immediate economic reform, right? Petrol prices, subsidy, gone, that announcement. And we saw immediate reactions. The markets reacted, Naira reacted. There was also an announcement in the opening speech this day 2 years ago that changed so much for many Nigerians. Yes, indeed. And a lot is still changing. And doubling down on the reforms that are supposed to be spearheading these new system that we're seeing. We're going to talk about all of that today. We have guests lined up and also our reporters. They're going to be joining us and telling us what people think as we test the pulse of Nigeria out there 2 years into this present administration. Now, I guess we'll be joined by experts, analysts, and of course, we want to hear from you as well. So stay tuned with us as we unpack the state of the nation midway through the administration journey. Let's invite our very first guest now, shall we? Our very first guest, yes. We have Dr. Muda Yusuf joining us now for the conversation. And I think it's best we start on a more personal note. What has changed for you over the past 2 years?
Well, I think I will take a cue from what you said. It's about adjustment. Because when you have situations where your income has not increased, possibly significantly, and the cost of living, the cost of operations and things have increased, I think the first thing that will happen is that you have to adjust. You have to reorder priorities. A whole lot of adjustment has to take place. I imagine. At least for anybody to continue to forge ahead, whether in your private capacity as an individual or your capacity as a business. A whole lot of adjustment have taken place over the last 2 years. Indeed. Because the last 2 years have been quite turbulent.
Indeed it has. While you both have given your sides of the stories, I'm left out, so maybe I should. A lot has changed. The luxuries are no longer there. We have to use every single penny, kobo, if that still exists, wisely. But we have a very special package here that we'll be rolling now. Let's take a look at this before we come in with the very detailed questions that we have for the good, humble Dr. Muda Yusuf here.
Since mid-2023, President Tinubu's administration pushed bold reforms to fix what has been perceived as a structurally imbalanced economy. Key amongst these is removing petrol subsidies.
It has increased the income to the government, so they've made more money because they're not paying that subsidy. But to the consumers, costs have gone up. So the cost of living has gone up. But we have to understand that what Tinubu was handing over was an economy with no cash flow. So they had no choice but to remove that subsidy to allow the government get funds to do basic services. Without the removal of the subsidy, I'm sure they cannot pay salaries.
People saw the benefits of the banking reforms that President Obasanjo under Charles Soludo, things were better.
The Central Bank of Nigeria unified exchange rates, causing a 56% naira depreciation in 2024, with the naira moving north and nearing over 2,000 naira to the US dollars. The CBN also said the new reality boosts transparency in the FX markets while attracting $6 billion in foreign inflows and hiking diaspora remittances by 61%.
The weaker naira attracts new foreign portfolio investments and should encourage exports. The problem being that now Nigeria does not have the advantage of local production to take advantage of the weaker naira.
These gains, however, further fueled inflation and forex volatility. Nigerian banks smiled afterwards, but it further weakened the purchasing power of everyday Nigerians. In response, the central bank aggressively raised the monetary policy rates from 11.5% before President Tinubu came in to an increase which witnessed 6 hikes in 2024 alone. The real economy heaved a sign of relief at both the February and the recent May 2025 Monetary Policy Committee meetings, as the CBN opts to hold rates, signaling a cautious pause.
In strategy terms, when you're using a specific strategy and it's working fit for purpose, so I think there's no issue with retaining the rates, and so maybe they've decided to just keep it and monitor.
The economy grew 3.4% in 2024, up from 2.74% in 2023. Led by the services sector, especially financial services, telecoms, and ICT. Meanwhile, Nigeria's public debt rose by 48% to 144.67 trillion naira, driven by currency reevaluation and increased borrowing. In Q2 2024, debt servicing exceeded 160% of government revenue, raising concerns about fiscal sustainability. Foreign reserves ended stronger at $40.9 billion, boosted by Eurobond inflows and oil revenues. In 2025, Nigeria fully repaid its COVID-19 loan.
In terms of public debt profile, I think that its impact on fiscal policy cannot be, overemphasized. But the point is, let's make it fundamentally clear that borrowing is not a problem, but it's what are the terms of such borrowing, as well as conversations around what such monies are used for.
By Q2 2025, signs of stability emerged. Inflation dropped to 24.2% in March, aided by a rebased GDP basket and FX measures like the electronic foreign exchange matching system launch. The naira steadied at 1,599 naira to a dollar, and oil output rose slightly. The government proposed a 54.99 trillion naira budget, 10.6% above 2024, backed by tax reforms and strong revenue prospects. At the beginning of Q2 2025, specifically April inflation fell further to 23.71%.
Countries like India, countries like that Brazil, because they are willing to do their new markets, they will not be so particular about tariffs, they will not be so particular about protection, they will not be so particular about all those things, because these are people that want to expand their market as well. So you're giving us an intra-global affair.
If reforms stay on track, the IMF and World Bank see stable inclusive growth by late 2025, with GDP at 3.0% and 3.6% respectively. The foundation is set, but can Nigeria deliver? In Lagos for News Central, I am Juliet Roland.
Look at the economy there as it stands. Our correspondent Juliet Roland. bringing us that one. Very in-depth look at exactly where we stand economically. But we also have Chinwe Ogele, who is our News Central correspondent from Eastern Nigeria. She's joining us now via video. Chinwe, good morning. It's still morning. Good morning to you, Chinwe. Now, I understand that your network might be a bit iffy, but we're going to try still. We're hoping you can give us an idea of what it is like 2 years down the line for businesses, perhaps, maybe in Eastern Nigeria, what you've seen, what you've reported through the past 2 years.
Okay, you know, a lot of sounds from people, they have the conversation why the constitution somehow crumbling because of the security issues that face money and on any
we're struggling right now to pick up on you know, your response to what's happening in Eastern Nigeria, but we know that there has been a lot going on. The effects of the sit-at-home on businesses alone, which this is obviously is over, but I can imagine how businesses are recovering from that era. We're going to come now to the studio where we have Dr. Muda Yusuf, and I think we should just begin from, I mean, the broader economy and obviously the impact on the private sector and some of the reforms. Obviously, this past 2 years, heavy on reforms from this administration. Let's begin with the CBN governor, for example. We know that he came in later on in the administration, a very slow start, right? I remember some complaints, high hopes, and you know, he didn't hold the MPC meeting for quite a while. And then he kicked off, and it's been one thing after the other. What's your assessment of the CBN governor, and what reforms or policies have stood out for you from him?
Well, generally, you know, when we assess what has happened in the last 2 years, I think it is appropriate to situate it within the context of the legacy issues. You know, what exactly led to all these reforms? Because the administration practically inherited an economy that was practically broken, which needed to be fixed. You know, so it was the need to fix the economy that necessitated the reforms. And one of the areas that was actually really broken was our foreign exchange and monetary policy space, you know, which was why we now had all the monetary policy reforms that we have, you know, under the present, you know, CBN governor. The first, of course, was the, you know, the foreign exchange policy reform. And generally, you know, there was this philosophical shift from what used to be an unorthodox monetary policy to an orthodox monetary policy. And what that meant was that under the Emefiele regime, that's the former CBN governor, there was a lot of unorthodox management approach, policy approach to fixing the economy.
Right.
And his thinking at that time was that this is a developing economy that requires a lot of intervention. And he believed that the classical economic principles cannot fix the economy, that the economy required a lot of intervention. So he practically suspended market principles and decided to you know, adopt administrative control. It was very heavy on intervention. You know, there's a debate as to whether that was good or bad. But he was heavy on intervention. He was also heavy on administrative allocation of foreign exchange, which also created a whole lot of problems. So by the time the administration was, you know, exiting, the situation had gone so bad. You know, our external position had practically collapsed. Our net reserves was less than $5 billion US. So it was a major crisis waiting to happen. So that is what necessitated the steps that have been taken by the current CBN administration. Right. And the reforms were essentially around allowing the market to determine, you know, interest rates largely, and allowing the market to determine the exchange rates.
Dr. Yusuf,
those were the critical pillars of the reform.
I have certain questions regarding these reforms and exactly how or which specific ones actually helped the economy, because the economy didn't just, I mean, we're experiencing hardships, that is true, but it did grow by about 3.4%, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to come back and ask you that question, but currently, I'm being told that we have Chamunda Beng, News Central correspondent, who will be speaking to us now. I think she's in local markets. We're also going to be joined by Aishat in Abuja, but not currently. They'll be speaking to us as they're located in local markets to speak with the petty traders on prices of goods and also how they have survived the current hardships. Chamunda Beng, business correspondent, good morning and welcome. Please, can we confirm that you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Mazino.
Grand. So, Chairman, first, please just give us an idea of what it is like, perhaps what the traders are telling, how they've managed the past 2 years.
Well, there's been a lot of changes so far that President Tinubu has put into place. And as we all know, 2 of them have been floating the naira, as well as the removal of fuel subsidy, which basically rocked Nigeria's economy to its core. So if you speak to people out there, they'll tell you, everyone will tell you that they're not finding anything easy. It's difficult for them to call a friend to ask for money because even that friend is looking for money as well. But we're in Oyingbo Market and we're going to be speaking to Nigerians, and we do have a trader that we'll be speaking to in a bit. But we want to know how they feel about President Tinubu's tenure so far and how some of the policy changes that he has made has affected them, has affected their sales, and has affected their daily lives. So we have here with us Oluwatoyin, I believe. Good afternoon, ma. How are you doing? All right, so please, can you tell us how some of these changes that President Tinubu has put in place has affected you and your daily life?
It's affected me because there's nothing. We are suffering too much. The suffering is too much for us. Now, see, rain is falling and we are inside it. So, and it is not good now. No nothing, no everything. Even said we will be looking for parties to take rice to go and give our children at home because how's everything be? And it's not good. There's nothing now. See us. See what we are wearing. The poverty is too much for us. The poverty is too much for us. Everybody is suffering. Before, we know how Nigeria be. But now, there's nothing at Nigeria now. The suffering is too much. So, please, ever begging to do. See now. Before, we are selling water leaf to 200. Now, 500, 1,000. And the market is not moving. No buyers. Everybody are selling, they are not selling, they are not selling. So that's how. The one that I bought yesterday, I threw everything away. The money is not, the money is not increased. Today I bought again, that to give my children money to eat. There's nothing again. I came today, see, my water leaf is still much. We are still in it. Rain is falling, everything is doing us.
How long have you been in the market now? For how many hours have you been here? Have you been able to make any sales?
Yesterday night. We have been in market since yesterday night. Yesterday night. See the time. Check the time now.
Have you been able to make any sales?
No sales. That's what we are. That's what we are telling. No customer, no sales, no nothing.
What about the cost of transportation? What does it cost for you to be able to move your goods from here to the market?
What make me?
I said the cost of transportation. What does it cost for you to move your goods to the market and go back with them as well?
I'm living at Ogun State. I'm living at E4. Check the transport for that place to here. I'm not living this area. In the night, we will sleep at this place. This is where we are sleeping the night. Because of to make something for our children to eat. We are sleeping here. Rain will fall, beat us. Now we are not selling anything. No markets. And we are going home. Check our transports from here to E4. So please, everything.
What has been the reaction from people that come to buy from you? What have they said so far about the prices themselves?
They say it's too cost. They are complaining that it's too cost. Market is too cost for them. So and they are not selling because the market is too cost. That's why they are complaining.
All right, there you have it, right out of the horse's mouth themselves. Nigerians are not finding anything easy at all. They are finding it difficult to make sales. As she said, sometimes she comes to the market and she ends up going back with these goods. At the end of the day, it's just a complete waste and it's a loss of money.
All right, Chamunda Beng, thank you very much for that coverage, our business correspondent there. And of course, we'll come back to you as we progress in the conversation. Dr. Muda Yusuf, I mean, you saw and you heard, I mean, that is, grassroots, micro, MSME, sharing her perspective, her experience. And I think one thing that stood out there was purchasing power. So let us a bit into how the purchasing power of the people has depleted and how that is affecting the business owner.
You see, first of all, let me say that there is no leader of any country that will take delight in deliberately inflicting pain on its people. It's our people. These reforms has brought about a lot of these challenges. But I must say that there was no alternative to those reforms. Those reforms needed to happen if we don't want the economy to completely go under. Because we have to segment this conversation into three. There are issues around the macroeconomic environment, which needed to be stabilized. You can't build something on nothing. Because we had a situation where, just as I said, our external position had practically collapsed. We had a situation where even our letters of credit were no longer being honored by correspondent banks abroad. We had a situation where we were spending almost 80% of revenue on subsidy. So there was no way we could go forward. It was a disaster waiting to happen. That is what led to all these reforms. But whether the government could do a lot better in terms of ensuring that we mitigate the pains of this reform, yes. Perhaps we could have done a few things differently so that the pressure on the vulnerable segments will not be as much as it has been. So there are macroeconomic issues which we needed to deal with. There are productivity and production issues which we needed to deal with. And there are social issues, which is about these issues of poverty and the well-being of the people. So the conversation should be focused at those three levels, Yeah. So in terms of the macro issues, the steps that have been taken for me are okay.
What specific steps do you think have been made or taken as a form of intervention with what's happening, the reforms, obviously heavy reforms, heavy impact, in terms of interventions to mitigate it? And standing out again is the purchasing power of the people. You want a $1 trillion economy, right? But the people don't have the money to keep things going. To keep businesses going, to keep their money, to purchase the goods, the businesses to keep open, right? Power, all those other things that they're dealing with. So in terms of intervention and the infrastructure to keep the economy going, even in the middle of reforms, has this administration done enough?
Well, within the limits of the resources they have, I think they have done something reasonable. But what I think they haven't done sufficiently of is to address specifically and more deliberately issues of the cost of living, access and affordability of basic things like food, like transportation, like healthcare, like education, those basic things. I think because the reform itself has come with some elevated level of improved revenue. And the whole essence of the reform, to some extent, even to a large extent, is to redistribute the wealth of the country. Because the argument was that under the former policy regime, there was a lot of people benefiting from this arbitrage in foreign exchange. There were a lot of people benefiting from this subsidy scam. So the whole idea is to stop all those leakages and channel the savings to benefit the people.
Dr. Yusuf, thank you very much.
It is that trickle-down effect that we have not been able to deliver properly.
Okay. Well, Dr. Yusuf, we have other correspondents we'll be speaking with, but before then, we have joining us for this conversation Mr. Femi Onokaran. He's an economist and also policy analyst. Femi, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Can we confirm your audio, please, Femi? I'm hoping you can hear us. If you're muted, you want to...
yes, I can.
There you are. Thank you very much, Femi. Femi, I want to welcome you on a positive note first off. We're talking about the hardships that Nigerians have been facing economically since the past 2 years, 2 years led by this administration, the reforms that have led to this. But within this time, the economy did grow by about 3.4%. I'm wondering what you think about that, if you agree that there seems to be some groundwork that's working and perhaps maybe there might be needed some patience on the side of the Nigerian people. What do you think?
Okay, thank you. I believe that first, in solving any problem, you need to really understand what the problem is about, not just haphazard a solution. So the first thing is we need to understand what microeconomics is and what macroeconomics is. At the top level, in terms of the economy, inflation, budget allocations, we're talking macro fiscal policy matters. At macroeconomic level, we're talking about individual concerns in terms of price migration, demand and supply bands, and all that. So before it trickles down to that level, for people to appreciate the developments and the strides, whichever way the government has been making, the macro has to be sorted out. And I think that's what this administration has actually focused itself on. The two principal things that a lot of people refer to as the issues that we have, subsidy removal and harmonization of effects. Those were necessary things because the country was not going to go forward in any positive direction with that load, that burden hanging on us over time. There's no way. It may look nice. So imagine a regular human being, right? You have a job, but you're living off debt. You're living off favors from friends. Others would think that you're doing well. But once that, dries up, then you become exposed. Everyone now sees you for exactly what you are, that you had limited income, actually pursue this stuff. And that was the situation we found ourselves as a country at the time this administration took over. So those were tough decisions that a lot of economists have been calling for over time. I think that Nigeria is going in the right direction. All projections of the economy, right, from other leading experts in the field, project that Nigeria is going in the right direction. On the flip side of it, how do the common man, like we say, they get benefits from this? How do they realize immediate benefits? A couple of things would have to change in how we approach this ourselves.
You're getting another call.
There has to be a reorientation. So there's one. There's no free lunch again, right, in the country. There's no free arbitrage scenarios again. Well, subsidy scam is off the table. Now we're going to go by the laws of demand and supply. Let the economy find its level, but that injection of either capital or policy initiatives can have proper effect on the people. For example, if we're talking about food security, if there is an issue in the food basket area of the country, the onus is on the people and subnational governments and federal government as well to build capacity in other areas so that we are not exposed. It's called a key man race in business analysis, and we have exposed ourselves to that such that anyone can target an area of weakness and create an issue for the whole economy and country. It also represents an opportunity because if we say that there's food scarcity, it means a lot of people want to buy. It's not that they don't have money to buy. It means that the volume of food available is less than the amount of money available. If you increase the volume of food available, right, you increase the volume of affordability, the ability to afford those things. So it's a mixed bag of things. I think that the economy is moving in the right direction. All indices point in this, and support this particular position. Even with the recent debt alignment program that the government is doing, in terms of borrowing over a 2-year plan, it shows minds who are thinking of not just now, not just enjoying the benefits now and spending the money, but minds who are looking at more progressive issues in terms of where we will be as a country going forward.
Now I hear you, but before you go too far, I wanted to take you on something that you said regarding the fact that the reforms could be what's causing the hardships now, but it will take time to trickle down to the common man. 2 years down the line, however, let's ask the questions. how long will it take before the hardships begin to disappear? Because everybody, like you've just seen, we had Chamun out there in the markets, and you could see how the expressions from the trader she was speaking with, they want to know how long would it be? Would it take the next 2 years? And at the end of the next 2 years, would the administration be asking to be given another 4 years? And do you think Nigerians would actually submit to this in the long run? So how long is too long?
Okay, so in my opinion, in medical science, if you ask a doctor, how long before I recover, there's a time frame. But that's because they would also define for you, as with all science procedures, that these conditions must be met. So if I say that your drug will be effective 2 to 3 days or 3 to 5 days, you shouldn't engage in strenuous activities. If you engage in strenuous activities in that period, or you expose yourself to more harm in that period, of course, the effectiveness of the drug that I'm administering is going to be reduced. So that's how.
Femi there.
It looks like the rains may be interfering with the network. But let's come to Dr. Muda Yusuf. And obviously, he has stated, Femi, stated that the economy is in the right direction from all indicators, and we're hearing that over and over, even from government officials. We had the CBN governor mention the fact that the economy has turned the corner. We had a spokesman also say we're out of the ICU. What specific indicators are pointing to the fact that, all right, we are out of the ICU, we have turned the corner, we are on a new road economy-wise?
Now, to support our international trade process, you need reserves. And just as I said at the opening, our reserves had practically collapsed before the advent of this administration. Now, the net reserves, because without reserve, you cannot support even your currency. Without reserve, you cannot support your international trade. The net reserve has grown from about $3 billion to about 23 billion US dollars. So for anybody who is investing in the country, for any foreign investor that wants to come into the country, these are some critical variables that you look at for you to be sure to have that confidence that you can do business in this country. And if you do your business in naira, you can take out your money in dollars. So that's a fundamental thing that needs to be in place to ensure that you have a stable economy. Secondly, the volatility that we saw in the second half of 2023 to the first half of 2024, the volatility in the FX, that volatility had moderated significantly. And that the easing of that volatility is also something that inspires the confidence of investors. And we have now seen a situation where the CBN, unlike what we saw in 2023, part of 2024, when the exchange rate was going to 1.8, going to 1,008, 1,009, some people are predicting that it will get to 2,000. At that time, the CBN was not in a position to intervene at all. So we had a completely floated exchange rate. But in the last 6 to 7 months, we have seen some steady intervention by the CBN in the foreign exchange markets, which some people refer to as managed float, because the CBN now has a lot more reserves by virtue of the reforms to be able to intervene in the market. So these are evidence that we have seen some positive outcomes around these reforms. Then in terms of revenue, the revenue to the federation account has improved. First, on the back of the foreign exchange, because all the money that all those who are engaging in arbitrage were making are now being, harvested and now, being put into the federation account. All the leakages in the area of subsidy and all of that has now been, properly put together and now imparting on the federation account. So it is not only the federal government that has now benefited, it is also the subnationals. So when we are having this conversation, we should also be interrogating what the subnational governments are doing.
Okay.
Because they are closer to the people. So when we are talking about issues of poverty and the rest of them, they have a role to play. They have a role to play in providing education, in providing transportation, in supporting agriculture, even in supporting issues of security. So we should also avoid the tendency to federalize all the problems, all the challenges in the...
That's a very interesting way to put it, actually.
Yes, in the economy.
Avoiding tendency
so
to
these
federalize
are
it.
some of the things that are happening, but I must admit that we have not crafted the policies enough to impact on the vulnerable segments of the society.
Dr. Mudashiru, we're going to come to
that is important.
I think our next set of questions should be about that. But before we do, we have our News Central correspondent on a video call here with us, Aisha Salihu from Abuja. Aisha, it's good to have you here on this special day broadcast. We'd like to know, from your location, we had Chamun from earlier here in Lagos tell us about how traders are seeing the economy or how it's affecting them. On your side of the country, what is it like? If you'd first of all at least start with that. I'm hoping Aisha can hear us. There might be a bit of a delay, but I think that's a bit too long for a delay. We'll try and get that connection going with you, Aisha, so please do stand by. I hope you can hear us. We'll try and fix that one, but we'll come back to the studio here.
Yeah, it's important we get to her because, again, as you were saying, it's a subnational state. She's in the southeast, closer to the people in some sense.
I do have a question regarding productivity, however, and Femi, if Femi is still with us. Femi, this question is going to go to both you and Dr. Yusuf, who's in the studio here, but I'd like Dr. Yusuf to please have a go at it first. Regarding productivity, the reforms that are being made by that were made in the past 2 years by the Nigerian government, the first big one was take away fuel subsidy. Many question where the monies that are being realized from this or that was being purported to be stolen have gone to. A lot of people are still waiting for this to trickle down to the common man, but then there is still the aspect of productivity. Taking away fuel subsidy meant that we had to pay more for petrol. Most businesses actually run on these sources of energy. How did that affect businesses in Nigeria, and would it get any better as we go?
Well, when we talk about productivity, we talk a lot more about infrastructure generally, because it is infrastructure provision that enhances productivity, that makes the economy a lot more competitive. Now, we had a long history of infrastructure decay. Whether you are talking about the railway system, you are talking about the power sector, and you are talking about even the road transportation. We had a long history of decay of infrastructure. Now, this is not to defend the present administration, but when you have that kind of decadence that has taken place for over 2 decades, you can't fix it in 2 years. It's not possible.
Did the removal of fuel subsidy attempts to fix it in any way?
Of course, it does. It does, because this is what that meant was that the government now had a lot more revenue to begin to now fix some of these things. And in fairness, we have seen some impact in terms of road transportation. That is building roads and all of that, both in the cities and even major highways across the country, whether you are talking of the east, the north, and even the southwest here, So we have seen some impact on that. And at the subnational level, because of the improvement in their revenues too, some of them have been investing significantly on road infrastructure, for instance. In terms of power is a completely different issue. Because the power situation is such that right now, as we speak, the GENCOs are saying that the government is owing them 4 trillion naira. We are still dealing with a major subsidy conundrum as far as the power sector is concerned.
Now, I think we still have Femi in with us here on this conversation. Femi, I don't know if you can take a swing at that question I asked earlier regarding the subsidy removal and how it's affected the economy or productivity in the economy.
Okay, thank you. Productivity itself, let's start with what is productivity. Talking about really how you can effectively use labor and capital to use goods and services. So then we break this down to all the different aspects of what comprises labor and what comprises, capital. As the other speakers said earlier, we had capital constraints in terms of investment inflow, debt obligations, and all that, which put Nigeria in a very sad position. However, on the flip side, when you remove fuel subsidy and you harmonize FX rate, which removes arbitrage and all those, you have loosened up funds and increased capital inflow into the economy. The question now is, how is the federal government and the subnationals, how are they effectively using this new inflow of capital? Now, the other part is the labor end of it. Labor is you and I, the people, is the business. So how are the people effectively pushing and taking advantage of this opportunity that the removal of fuel subsidy and the harmonization of FX has created? Rather than focusing on all the negative stuff, we can see, for example, that price of some goods are down, which means there's some leveraging on the capital agriculture, right? It means that things are eating up on that front. And that is a direct benefit of the removal of fuel subsidy and the harmonization. You can also see that things are finding a bit of a level. It will get expensive at a point, but our productivity in terms of our utility should be what we'll be talking about, which is our human capital development. And some of those obligations come down to the subnationals who have more capital at hand to actually provide effective solutions to the problem, like education and healthcare, road infrastructure and all those things. The platform has been laid. It is now the application, right, and how we all, as government, what we are trying to achieve, where we are trying to get to. If the labor itself has a misbalance in terms of the perception of what it should do, if it thinks more in terms of consumption, of course productivity is going to be less. Because who is going to produce what you're consuming? It means you would have to pay, and that is going to gulp up all the capital you have scraped up and saved. So your productivity becomes either declining or you just stalemate. And that's where I think we need to focus on how to empower the people, policy initiatives, create empowerment programs at productive levels, not handouts, but in terms of businesses, measurable observation of what is going on, monitoring of policy impact across board. That we believe is going to create the environment for a boost activity in the country. I'll give you an example. Power has improved significantly in many places. However, the question is, what are people using the power for? Very few are using the power available for any productive venture. Even something as simple as using the internet to find out information, find out opportunities across different areas that you can actually add value. Most people use it for entertainment. Entertainment is reward for work done. So that already tells you that productivity is going to decline if the labor end is not fixed as much as we're trying to fix the capital end. So the policies are good, they freed up a bit more capital, they've made the space a lot better, but we also now have to work on the labor end, the human capital development side of it, involving the subnationals, involving corporates, right, setting the tone for a general holistic productivity.
All right. I mean, there's something key you said there, of course, was the fact that we need to see more empowerment at production levels. Hopefully we do see that. We have Aisha Saliu, a correspondent, joining us from Abia State. Aisha, can you give us, from
She's in Abuja, yes.
I beg your pardon, Abuja. Can you give us a picture of, how the last 2 years has been for the media environment for businesses around you there?
So much for joining me this afternoon. As a matter of fact, I'm right here at the Utako Market in the nation's capital, Abuja Municipal Area Council to be precise. And I have spoken with some of the marketers here, the petty traders, and they have been speaking with me all morning, talking about their plight, what they are going through, the economic issues, in spite of the economic policies that the president has put in place, even since inception of power, since 2 years ago. And they did say that from what they are saying that from the policies, they are not seeing the ripple effect as in positively. But from what I have gathered, from what they have said so far, and from the policies that the government has put in place, you recall that immediately he came into power, he did say fuel subsidy was gone, right? And then that also had a ripple effect on the cost of food items in the market, cost of transportation, and other items, other areas of life of Nigerians. And also, he realized that, I think his administration realized that there is still food inflation, where he set up, and he did declare a state of emergency on food insecurity, and then he set up a committee to tackle all of that. But then 2 years after this particular declaration of state of emergency on food insecurity, there are still complaints, but we are in the market today to hear from average Nigerians who are feeling the brunt. We're here to establish that so that they speak to you firsthand. You hear from them what they're going through, and then perhaps you can also tell if the policies actually affect them. I'm here in Utako Market. There is a particular petty trader here. She sells soft drinks and a number of other food items. Good morning, ma.
Good morning.
Yes, your full name and boy.
My name is
Okay, you're live on TV now, and we're looking at the 2 years administration of President Bola Tinubu, and he has put on a lot of economic policies. I'd like to hear from you, as a petty trader in Utako Market in Abuja, how has these policies affected your business? I mean, cost of transportation, your income, and all of that.
Yes, I'm not, for this government presently, I'm not happy about it. I cannot survive, I'm not surviving the way I used to survive before. I used more money before to maybe manage myself, but right now, this government is not favoring me at all. Because formerly I used to buy my mineral, even with small money, but now with my big money I cannot afford it. Transport is taking all my maybe small profit I'm making. I cannot even afford to pay my child's school fees. Right now it is at home sitting down there, and others are in school, and I'm hustling. I cannot even make any profit every day, maybe in a day. I'm suffering in a day because of this government. It's not favoring me. For me, I'm saying out to my mind, it's not favoring me at all.
Okay, so what would be your message to the president? Because he has said that there are policies he's put in place to help ease your business.
Let him help us. Maybe reduce the prices of things, and maybe the fuel subsidy, maybe the price of the transport is too much. You cannot afford to, maybe the small money profit to make, use it in this thing, transport. Let him help us to bring down the prices of things so that we can maybe go further with the government. If not, right now we are not happy at all. Like personally, me, I'm not happy. I don't know of others.
Well, you have heard from a petty trader in the market here, Utako. We also have another person who's also willing to speak about her business, the nature of her business since the administration of the president 2 years ago. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Welcome, madam.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please, I'd like to hear from you. How has it been conducting your business since 2 years since the government came into power?
The business is not moving like that at all. During good luck, we are selling market. We know that we are selling markets. That I said, granite is just for 500 naira per bottle. But now that it's 2.5 that we're supposed to even enjoy, it's now that everything even worse. We are not seeing gain. Even the money that we used to buy it, we didn't even see the money. We talk more of gain. Our certificate, we just banned our certificates, and we are doing the one that God said we should do to sustain ourselves for now. But we are begging to the government. May God touch their hearts so that they will bring things normal so that the masses will enjoy. That is what we have to say to the government for now. Let God touch their hearts so that they will know that people are there suffering. There are so many people there that cannot even do this thing that I'm doing now. But they don't know how to even feed. If you can see now, there's many people rolling in the streets, begging. It's not supposed to be like that. God really bless us with many things in this country Nigeria, but our leaders, they are not trying at all. We are begging them so that they will do well. May God touch their mind to do well so that everything will become normal, that we will enjoy our country Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, there you have heard it from the horse's mouth. You heard from two petty traders in the market here, Utako Market, in the nation's capital, Abuja, and they have stated their concerns and how the economic policies that the administration of President Bola Tinubu has put in place in the last 2 years, how it's not even really, has not really impacted on them. Mazino.
All right, Aisha Saliu, our correspondent, joining us from the nation's capital, the seat of power, Abuja. Quite a lot said there, and I feel it reflects, what was said earlier about crafting policies that actually impact those at the grassroots. There was a lady there. She said she had to abandon her certificates and, sell.
Haven't we all
trade.
already?
Well,
but I think there's one way most people aren't looking at this. Now, we understand that we're going through hardships, but most people don't understand why exactly. And for the people that we have seen our correspondents speak with, that seems to be the major issue, that they don't know why these hardships are going on. So maybe there seems to be a certain lack of awareness campaign for why these matters are the way they are, and perhaps maybe when there might be a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know, Dr. Mudashiru, if you agree with me here, if we have a lack of awareness.
It's a communication issue.
Communication issue.
Yeah. I think the government needs to do a lot more in terms of communication. Although I do know they have multitude of spokespersons for the president.
Who we don't know.
Well, mixed messaging there
exactly.
as well.
It's like the end result of these communications are not reaching the right people.
Yeah,
it's like you call for
that is important.
Town hall, in quote, and you find the kind of people that are there only came because of, well, maybe some incentive, not the real grassroots.
That communication is important. But in addition to that, government needs to do a lot more, again I must repeat, to tackle the issue of these basic needs of the people.
Would amenities help?
Well, first of all, when we talk of food, security is key. Government have been throwing a lot of money on this security issue, but we have not been getting the right kind of outcomes. So perhaps there is a need to review the strategy in terms of getting the right kind, because no matter how we look at it, most of the food we eat in Nigeria today are still food that are produced locally, almost 80% of them. And so if the farmers that are producing this food are having this challenge, of course, this problem is likely to persist. Secondly, for industries that are in the food processing business, for instance, we are talking about bread, we are talking about noodles, we are talking about spaghetti, all these things that are staple food. Government should have engagement with them. And luckily, there are not many. How can we bring down, what incentives can we give you to bring down this cost? Could it be tax? Could it be cost of your raw materials? Could it be cost of your machineries? Whatever it is, we should put that on the table for them so that we can drive down the price of this basic, including cooking gas. These things are very basic. Even if the government has to trade off some revenue to get that done in terms of the concessional government, let them do it. It's something that is worth it, because it doesn't also not look good politically to be having this kind of complaints and appraisal of the administration from the grassroots. Then, thirdly, is issue of public transportation. We cannot leave the ordinary people to a public transportation that is provided by the private sector. The private sector is there for profit. If they have the opportunity to exploit, they will exploit. So all the governments at all levels, they should spend a lot more on public transportation. Subsidize public transportation. Government should also address the issue of transportation by reducing the tariffs on all these buses. Any bus that is 18-seater and above, if you need to scrap the tariff on them, scrap it. So that companies, schools, more people will be able to put these buses on the road. So these are some of the quick wins that we can deploy to make sure that we crash some of these prices so that all these complaints by the vulnerable people, you can tackle them. This is not something you can tackle by palliatives. Palliatives cannot solve this kind of problem.
Just a quick reminder to anyone who's just joining us now, we are doing the scorecard of the current administration, Bola Tinubu administration. So far in 2 years down the line, are the reforms working? How would you say the government has done? We have our special guests here in the studio with us, Dr. Muda Yusuf, economist and also CEO Center for Promotions of Private Enterprise. And also joining us via video, we have Femi Onakare. Femi, I'm sorry if I didn't get that right in the beginning, but now I have it right. He's economist and also policy analyst. He's been speaking with us since on the matters. I think you have a question for the doctor, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. And before we tie things together, and we're going back to the abandoned certificate, because there was something, I know some people do so willingly, some unwillingly, and it's down to unemployment rate. That's something I'd like us to touch on before we wrap up, right? The unemployment rate. We know that when there was the major shake-up and reforms in the economy, a lot of companies had to shave off, reduce their staff size. So what do you think more needs to be done, right, as regards employment in Nigeria, which of course trickles down to help purchasing power and all of that?
You see, it is entrepreneurs that create jobs. If the entrepreneurs are struggling with the environment, there's no way they can create the jobs, no matter at what level or across whatever sector. So it comes down to the kind of environment that we create. And when we talk about creating an enabling environment, we talk about the macroeconomic environment. All this inflation, exchange rate, and all of that. That is one way to create an enabling environment. Then you will have the structural environment or the infrastructure environment. When we are spending so much on power and things like that, it makes it very difficult for you as an entrepreneur to create new jobs, even to retain existing jobs. You know? So these are some of the things that we need to put in place. Because this is a big economy, no matter what we say. A population of 230 million people are still counting. It's a big market. So there is demand for all sorts of things. So if we create the environment, our entrepreneurs will have better access to the market.
Right.
They'll be able to deliver a lot more things. And as their businesses grow, they'll be able to employ more people. So the whole thing comes down to the quality of the environment, either at the macroeconomic level, even financing. Now interest rate is about 30%. What business can you do with 30% interest rate? It comes down to the point of the monetary policy regime that you talked about earlier. We should have a concessionary financing window, you know, for SMEs, for big companies, all these development finance institutions. I know we have a bit of that now, in fairness, but you can expand the scope of that, both at the federal level and at the subnational level. So it is investors that create jobs. So we need to create the environment for those jobs to be created and the existing jobs to be retained.
And again, it's the intertwine of macros and micros. They're two sides of the same coin. They may be getting it right in terms of reforms on that macro level, but coming down to the common man, it may not be, you know, reflecting.
Seems that's taken a bit of time. Now that we're on that subject, I wanted to ask Femi. Femi, the Nigerian government wants to move Nigeria away from oil and grow certain aspects such as tech and maybe services. Do you think we're doing good 2 years down the line in these aspects?
I didn't get that. Could you come again?
I said that the Nigerian government wants to move the economy away from its reliance on oil. That's the oil sector. They want to grow certain aspects of the economy like tech, for instance, and also services. So I'm asking whether they've done good so far in the past 2 years regarding this.
Well, we've had
while you're working on your connection, Femi, are you with us? We seem to have lost that connection. I will have to redirect it to you, Dr. Yusuf. Tech seems to be big, especially with the current what do you call it now? The new youngins are going at it.
Investments.
And you see investors actually attracted to this sector, but have we done enough?
We have made a lot of progress as far as the fintech and all these ICT-driven businesses are concerned.
Do you think it has made a significant shift away from that oil?
Well, in terms of a significant shift from oil, that may be too early to happen, because as we speak now, oil still accounts for, oil and gas together accounts for about 80% of our foreign exchange earnings. So it's still very strategic. But the point to make is that we have seen a lot of progress in terms of the role of ICT, in creating jobs for the young people. Quite a lot of progress. And we have seen how a lot of young people are also leveraging this technology on Instagram, on Facebook, to do some, a lot of stuff, marketing, a whole lot of creativity has come into that space. And we have seen a lot of young people also doing well in the area of entertainment, music, fashion design, all sorts of things.
And the focus from the government on that is quite encouraging. However, the services part of things now, when you look at countries like India or Singapore, for instance, where they have such a large group of young people, they found a way to sell this to other countries. Can Nigeria not have reforms that could help us sell customer care, for instance? There's a lot of people out there who can engage.
No, that's already happening.
That's already happening.
It's already happening.
Outsourcing.
Outsourcing, I think it's already happening. But it hasn't grown to the level that we expect to see. But as I speak to you, there are a lot of young people who are rendering services to companies abroad. Things that are leveraging on IT. Outsourcing, and it's already happening. In fact, there's a lady in Abuja who has invested massively in this outsourcing business. So that is happening. But we need to do a lot more to support our young people across other sectors to be able to migrate legitimately. Just as it happens in all these Philippines and Indian. They support them. Filipinos, they even export caregivers. Yes. They export people who are, a whole lot of things. We have artisans here. In some countries, they are short of artisans. So we should invest a lot more, at least maybe through our diaspora commission window, to help package all these artisans, and let us see how we can, create opportunities for them abroad.
Yes, we know that digital and tech is driving quite a lot in the global economy and perhaps local. Let's come to Femi now. I believe you have you here with us now.
Femi, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good.
There was a connection issue.
Yeah.
All right, it's great to have you back, and we've had Dr. talk briefly about, the tech and the innovations we're seeing and how that has a lot of potential to drive the economy. But a low-hanging fruit that, yes, we are trying to drift away from it has been oil, right, as a form of boosting revenue. But how would you say that sector, the oil sector, in terms of boosting revenue, has performed over the past 2 years? We're in the middle of some sort of reform. Give us your perspective on that.
Okay, so I'll try to address, the different areas. Regarding the oil sector, one of the issues we had with the previous administration was we had incessant disruption of services at that area, so we could never meet our OPEC allocation, and that created a revenue constraint. Of course, over the years, in the last 30, 40 years, we have always known that we needed to move away and diversify from oil as a which brings us back to the other position. Before I go there, it has improved. There's been a bit more stability, but the issues have not been resolved. And the over-reliance on the oil sector revenue, it has a big impact on the economy, because there are things that they're out of our control. We can't do anything about them. There's a war in the Middle East, trickles down to everybody, and prices shake, and our projections and budgets are affected. So it's important that we transit away. One of the areas that people feel as a low-hanging fruit is going to the tech and services space. And Nigeria has done well in one service space that, it's become too familiar for a lot of people to realize that we're not really verifying that area, and that is banking services, for example. And even our telco services have improved over time, deepening our service structure. The challenge is how do all these things at the high level trickle down to productivity at the low level. I think a major part of what we're ignoring as a people is the social economics of all these dynamics that we're looking at. And what do I mean by that? There is unfortunately a perception of I am entitled to this, I should have this, without the process being appreciated. And we refer to other countries who have put in place processes and abide by structured pathways. The successes that they achieve using those things, we assume that we should just have them automatically without the same level of input. And that is just, misrepresentation of the fact. If you say you want to go into services, then your power naturally has to go up. Your power has to be more stable. Because why would I outsource to a place that they don't have enough power? And then 247, interaction and engagement is cut off. It becomes a problem. It drives away from the cost saving. And if the cost of power is high, then there's no benefit for me outsourcing my service to your power. So we need to get it right on the power front. We want to go into services and tech. But the other part is also, like I'll come back, is human capital development. We need to re-educate the people first in terms of orientation. We don't need to politicize issues, and that is a matter that has affected the country, and it always brings us back. Every time, every issue is politicized. Now we're reviewing the subsidy removal harmonization, but if you recall, from like the very first week that the policies were put in place, before observing how they were going to operate, how it's going to affect people, what the projection will be, and it had been politicized. And some people had just come and say, oh, this government is bad, this policy is bad, this one I would have done it better. And it takes away focus from the real issues. It also takes focus of the people away from knowing, okay, this is how I should plan. So if you think you've been cheated, you are unlikely to make better plans regarding that particular situation. And that's unfortunately how a lot of our people look at it, that, no, I deserve more, but the crux of it is we have not created the balance for that. So I think there's a need for a re-education. Now, if you have developed the human capital, then you can talk about diversification into other areas of tech. Like the other speaker said, we have a lot of people who render services internationally. We're talking about creating a local ecosystem that benefits in terms of inflow of funds to the country, engagement and employment of our local people, and integration of this technology advancement into local productivity issues like farming, for example, agriculture, like mining can be improved, like customer relations can be improved, like even small low-hanging fruits like education can hang on technology for increased productivity and economic development. In the 2 years, we've seen strides in that direction. It has not been concretized because, as I said earlier, I think we are more focused on managing the macro area of the infrastructure, but with some of the support programs for MSMEs, for youth, for women, and some of the tax incentives that have been offered. I remember Mr. Taiwo Edele's tax route. All those things are setting the foundation for pushing forward. So what I would say is that it's been 2 years, then let's watch again, let's see how we develop from here. What do they build on these small progresses that they've had, these little wins? What do we build on it? How do we build on, okay, so we now have harmonized FX rates. How do we build on it? Now we have regular supply of PMS, we know the price is, okay, so how do we increase local productivity based on this thing? I think that's the direction I would like the government to inform and communicate to the people so that the opportunities are around, rather than everyone lamenting and being all in a haze. Everyone can see how we can work together to
Femi, while we're rounding up on everything here, this conversation between you and us and Dr. Yusuf here, I'd like to ask you, 2 years down the line, what would you score the administration real quick, please?
I didn't get you.
I'm asking for your score for the administration.
Oh, score. If I were to rate them, I would just say that they barely made the grade. I'll give them, in all fairness, in terms of feedback, maybe like 5.5. And that's considering all the challenges that they, had to endure. But in terms of our potential and where we should be in 2 years, they've done decent, it's above average, about 5.5 is a decent score.
5.5 out of 10. Dr. Yusuf, what would your score be, I'm wondering?
Maybe 6.
Maybe 6.
Yeah. Half-term examination indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Femi, thank you very much for joining us, giving us your time this morning into the afternoon. And Dr. Yusuf, also thank you very much for being live here with us in the studio.
Thank you.
I will ask our viewers to stay tuned because we're going all the way, I and Joanna, here up until 3 o'clock as we continue to look at other aspects, security, energy. So we're going to be taking your own concerns as well and perhaps telling you how you could get across those concerns and we can let the people know as well. But do stay tuned. We'll do a very short break and then we'll have our other guests in here. Until then, let's keep it with us here on News Central.
All right, we continue with our assessment of 2 years of the President Bola Tinubu administration. It's half term. We've touched on economy. Now we are touching on security. We know that one of the mandates is security of lives and property. And of course, we will be speaking with Professor Kenneth Nweke. He's a professor of politics and governance. He's joining us from PH Rivers. And we also have Austin Azu. But first off, of course, I am Joanna Mustafa. With me is
Mazino
Appeal. Do you feel more secure? Let's start with that light banter. So, secure under this administration.
I think if you ask anybody here in Lagos, you won't get the full weight of that answer as you would ask anybody who's outside of Lagos, because we feel like we're inside one small safe bubble. But the fact is that I do travel a lot, and I mean inside of Nigeria, and I am aware of how people perceive security across Nigeria. Yes. People think, oh, it's so and so in certain places.
Especially by road. Especially by road.
Now, I won't say that it is absolutely safe. I am still trepid when I travel. However, there's a big disconnect between what really is and what people think. From my own perspective. And there are cases where it's absolutely extreme, like in the north, which we will be discussing about that with our guests and also our correspondent. We, however, have a package on security that we'll be playing now. Right after that, we'll be introducing the guests and we'll be starting the conversations.
Nigeria faces a severe security crisis with a dangerous convergence of insurgency, banditry, cult violence and political kidnappings straining the state's response capabilities. Recent coordinated attacks by Boko Haram and ISWAP on military bases in Borno indicate a strategic shift, with insurgents now launching frontal assault on fortified army formations with alarming effectiveness.
We have had series of attacks in Borno State.
These attacks demonstrate their boldness, aimed to demoralize troops, plunder weapon stockpiles, and broadcast state vulnerability.
Why we are seeing many of these resurgences and the entry of many other armed groups into Nigeria, especially in its north, is the fact that it is down to the fact that governance has been abandoned in so many of these places. It's very easy for one to start an armed group in northern Nigeria because the basic function of the state, which is the protection of lives and properties in the area, have been abandoned.
The proliferation of IEDs continues to cause severe civilian casualties, with children representing roughly half of explosive-related casualties, according to UNICEF, making it a humanitarian crisis. The insecurity has spread beyond the northeast, with Boko Haram establishing a presence in Kwara and Niger State in north-central Nigeria. In the northwest, a notorious warlord has transitioned to a proto-warlord, levying taxes through terror. Urban unrest and political targeting have become prevalent, with incidents of cult violence in Lagos, Delta and Benue, as well as abductions and murders by suspected herders and militias groups in Ondo, Plateau and Benue State. In the southeast, despite efforts by security agencies, people in the region still live in fear of attacks by criminals and other groups fronting as separatist agitators.
We got to a stage, we got intel from the government of United Arab Emirates, giving us that we have a list of people sponsoring terrorism. Till date, we've not seen that list made public. Till date, we've not heard that some people have been prosecuted.
Within the last 2 years, about 300,000 repentant Boko Haram members and families have surrendered. I cannot completely say that 100% of those people that have surrendered are doing the right thing. Insurgency will never be ended by kinetic measures alone. We must ensure that the non-kinetic measures are also properly put in place.
There is also the factor of regional instability fueled by armed groups and infiltration of dangerous weapons from the north of Africa, which has compounded the insecurity in Nigeria.
Now what we realize is that if you look at the entire Sahel region, the pressure in Mali, Chad and Niger has put a lot of pressure in Nigeria, and that's why you see these recent attacks have occurred. But we are addressing that in clear terms, making it very serious that we are experienced personnel that have been here and have made that difference. Whatever is going on is just for a short while, now for this last week, and we have addressed it so drastically that it's going to stop.
Aside the introduction of new military equipment such as the 2 Augusta power attack helicopters, Forest Guards initiative, what is the government doing about all this?
Actions have been taken to ensure that we address the series of attacks that's ongoing. We have seen recently the new theater commander has been brought in, other commanders too have been changed. A lot of equipments are even being brought in to the theater.
If we have to use PMCs, that is fine, as long as the job is done. I know there is a national pride in not employing PMCs, but I think that's what we have to do.
As President Tinubu begins his 3rd year in office, the nation eagerly awaits tangible results in the efforts towards restoring peace and stability across all the regions. The government's commitment to addressing the security challenges and implementing sustainable solutions will be crucial in shaping Nigeria's future. In Lagos 4 News Central, Igbalani Omani.
Interesting report there by our correspondent Igbalani Omoni. Thank you very much for that one. Now let's talk security. We have our guest here with us, Professor Kenneth Nweke from Port Harcourt. He's an expert with politics and governance. Professor, you're welcome once again. Thank you very much for giving us your afternoon.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I have with me Joanna Mustafa here, and together we're going to be talking with you on the issues. First, sir, I wanted to get your take on, let's start with resurgency. Let's start with banditry in Nigeria. Let's start with the fact that it saw it come back. And many would say that it's even worse than what it used to be. We've had testaments from the governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum, who was actually on our breakfast show last week, and he gave very startling revelations about the situation of things. But what's your take 2 years down the line for President Bola Tinubu's administration? How well do you think they've done when it comes to resurgency, security generally?
The government has not done anything that is tangible, to bring down the tempo of insecurity that we have in the country, to be honest. It does not also suggest, by my statement, that the government is not doing anything, in this regard. Of course, you have expenditure so much going to security in terms of equipment, like your reporter, has started. And so a lot of monies are going into purchase of equipment, to address some of these issues in the country. But I want to tell you clearly that those efforts have not been able to yield the right dividends that we expect in terms of addressing the major security challenges that we have in this country. Banditry has been on the increase, and then kidnapping and all of those. And then what we hear is the president has summoned the service chiefs and all of those, and then giving them a marching order. I think that's the normal, the rhetoric that we have, between the chief security officer of the nation, being the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the president of the country, giving marching order. So it is not different from what we experienced during Muhammadu Buhari's government. It is not also different from what we experienced during the Goodluck administration. And some of these issues have been recurring. It becomes so peculiar for any government in power to deal with. And of course, some of these reasons were there or were advanced for the ousting of former President Goodluck Jonathan in the office, some years back, that the country was so insecure and the economy was running aground. And yet, when Muhammadu Buhari administration came on board, Nigerians had a lot of hope because they came with change mantra, and which also the president of this country today was also part of that change mantra. And so 8 years down the ladder, we didn't see anything that touched on the economy and touched on, security. And so now we have another president emanating from that same party, and yet the insecurity that we have in the country is still on the increase. As I speak to you, you can't be sure of anything at all. You are talking about banditry in the north, you're talking about insurgency and all of those. Then what about here in Port Harcourt that we live? Some people don't sleep with their two eyes closed. In my community the other day, the police reported that they foiled an armed robbery, attack on Ibueche Junction and all that. Normal day that people were going about their businesses and all that. And so yet the government is spending so much money on security. And I can't also say clearly that you just put the blame on the president that is at the center. Yes, the president or the commander-in-chief of the armed forces will take the larger chunk of the blames, but because the security architecture in terms of laws and all of those are being handled by the federal government. But again, what is the role of each state of the federation in managing these security challenges? How about local governments? And all of these are tiers of government that share from the revenue from the federation account. And so they also have a budget for security and all of those. So what are they also doing to help the federal government? Because President Tinubu is in Abuja. And so he cannot secure myself, living in Ibueche, for instance. He can't. When I say he cannot come from Abuja to secure me here. But he can, whatever structures or architecture that he puts on ground that will enable states, local governments draw, even communities, individuals. And so we are almost resorting to, we have resorted to protecting ourselves. Even in where we live today, we employ the services of security, vigilante and order to secure us. Because even when you call police for in the event of anything, they don't appear at all. And so we resort to paying money on a monthly basis to secure ourselves, because the government that went into a social contract, and the social contract basically was to protect life and property and give the citizens the best form of life. We have seen that successive governments, not just Mr. Tinubu's government, but that successive governments have failed to give us, that security that they entered into, that form part of the social contract, to us. And so citizens have now resorted to protecting their own lives on their own, because without protecting your life, you are gone. And so on the streets, people are harassing people on the street, boys are harassing people because people are hungry. If you don't address the economy very well, that will turn around the fortunes of the people will go into crimes. And so crimes have been on the increase everywhere, all the parts of the country. And so this was the same issue that threw former President Jonathan out of office, some years back in 2015. So why was that not also being addressed? Why was it not addressed by Buhari's government of 8 years? And then another government of APC that formed part of the fulcrum for change mantra is still on the of insecurity. And then what we hear is a marching order. That marching order for me is neither here nor there. I heard the chief of defense staff talking about some commanders being changed. It's not about changing who is leading and who is not leading. Even if it's even changed tomorrow, there's nothing that will also happen, because it is like government is spending so much money on security, and some people are eating fat from what government is spending, and yet there is no result. And I can't be commander-in-chief of the armed forces and then you're not giving me result. I'll fire you not fire you before you sign onto the contract of a new listen. We will sit down and tell me your strategy. It's not just appointing your cronies, as commanders in chief.
Getting from you.
Chief of defense staff, this, that matters. But
just a second, Professor. Just a second, Professor.
Down, what strategies do we?
Just a second, Professor. Joanna's been trying to get a word in.
Yeah, I hope you can hear us. And of course, he has, given quite a comprehensive response to the state of insecurity, touched on so many issues. But we're going to stick with, we talked about the amount being spent on security. Let's come to Austin Azu, who joins us from Delta State. He's our Delta State correspondent. It's great to have you in, Austin.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon to you. And of course, we are marking 2 years, 2 years of the Tinubu administration and assessing the security of the nation. And we know it's not just 2 years of Tinubu, it's 10 years of the APC. We've had a northern governor, we've had a southern governor, we have a president, I beg your pardon, right now. There has been a lot of attention on the amount, the growing amount being allocated to defense and security. It's the largest allocation on our budget right now, 4.91 trillion naira. Can we say we have seen any justification of that, amount? Is it being efficiently spent on securing the lives and properties of Nigerians? Can you hear me, Austin? Austin, are you there?
I don't know if Austin can hear us. Maybe we'll try and make sure that our connection... Okay, we hear that Austin has joined us now. Austin, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Zeno. Good afternoon.
All right. Go on, Joanna.
All right. You are there in Delta State. Give us a picture of what is happening in Delta State. Hopefully, did you hear that?
I'm sure he did.
Sorry, I didn't get the last part of your question.
Give us a picture of the security situation in Delta State 2 years under the Tinubu administration.
Well, fine and good. Of course, Section 14, subsection 2B of the 1999 Constitution guarantees that the primary purpose of government is to provide security and welfare for the people of the states. However, residents of Delta State has been grappling with insecurity for the past 2 years. Of course, ranging from kidnapping, rituals, and other nefarious activities being carried out by these men of the underworld. Of course, about 24 months ago, the state, precisely on March 14th, 2024, Okwama was deserted because of insecurity. However, other pockets of insecurity started erupting from different parts of the states. This has not actually gone down well. The farmers in the states can no longer go to their farms to go and cultivate their crops. And of course, in terms of harvesting their crops has become a major problem in the states. The police are trying their best to ensure they are able to curtail the excesses of these criminals. However, in some other areas, we have seen them displaying their achievements. Coupled with that, the state government has actually assisted them with utility vehicles, and some other individuals has actually helped them as well to help to curtail these excesses. But however, the recent in town is the issue of kidnapping. If you go to the forest within Delta North, within Ogwachuku, within Oboluku, and environs, it's obvious that you can't even go to your garden not alone to talk about going to your farmland. And of course, Delta State is not just oil producing state. Delta State is equally contributing to the food basket of the nation. In Ika, for instance, Ika South, Ika Northeast, where we have a very large expanse of land, and we have a lot of farmers who are producing for the people and exporting to others. Of course, they can no longer access their farmlands. About a few days ago, we saw on the news that about 4 individuals were kidnapped from their farmlands. And this has actually made farming to be very difficult here in the state. It means that for a farmer to start going to the farm to go and get farm produce, must definitely obtain permission from the police or go with the vigilante groups to guide and protect them. About 6 months ago, we equally saw that the Ibiri Settlement Farm happens to be a place where farmers go and cultivate, and of course that they are able to bring their farm produce. We are unable to access the settlement farm. We gather that suspected herders, clashed with them, preventing them from gaining access into their farms. I actually saw a viral video of these herders feeding their crops to their animals, thereby making it very difficult for them to go to their farmlands. However, at this present time, we saw that even in Jesse Kingdom, for instance, in Echo West local government area of Delta State, the traditional ruler has called on the Inspector General of Police, on the state government and relevant authorities to come to their aid. Jesse, for instance, happens to be one of the food baskets of the states, and of course they are known for their arable crops, known for their yam, known for their cassava, and they are good at producing gari and so on and so forth. Just a few days ago, the traditional ruler of Iseluku Kingdom and his kinsmen placed a curse on these kidnappers and these herders who have carried out nefarious activities in the kingdom. And it cut across the states. If you go from Delta North to Delta South, within Delta South we have, the one that happened in last year, precisely in Ohore, where about 5 police officers detailed from the force headquarters were ambushed and killed. So these nefarious activities have made it very difficult for investors to come into the states to come and invest. Even as we speak right now, there are some places in these states that you cannot even dare access your farmland because you are afraid of not returning back to your family. We saw what happened about a few months ago, precisely in Ugele, where it was 16 years old girl who was raped in the farm by suspected herdsmen, and this sparked a lot of reactions, and the people of Ugele's south, they protested, and this has affected individuals who are supposed to be producing food for the state. And of course, we have seen that even some people who are even flying the normal routes from Benin to Asaba, from Benin to Warri, they have been afraid of being, not to be kidnapped because the roads are in terrible situation. Apart from that, we only have a pockets of sea pirate issues still affecting the state and beyond. So it's a complex situation that the people at this time, they are crying for help. They are looking forward to a government who will prioritize their security, just as is enshrined in the Constitution in Section 14, subsection 2B, that the primary purpose of government is to guarantee their welfare. The question is, where is government? How is government providing security for these persons? And of course, even the people have resorted to self-help to ensure they're able to protect themselves. And most of the vigilantes in the local areas, most of them don't even have all it takes for them to confront these monsters who are coming to rape their mothers, rape their women, kill them in their farmlands, and so on and so
Austin
forth.
Can't seem to hear us. We'll be trying to get Austin to. I have to remember that it's trying to get Austin to stop. That's the problem.
Yes.
He can talk for years. But Austin, hopefully, if you can hear us, we're going to come back to you in just a minute. We're going to short break now. When we do come back, Austin, we're hoping that we can speak with people there in Delta State about the security situation there. But let's take the short break. We'll be back to assess the scorecard of the President administration for Bola Tinubu. We'll be back. It's scorecard time, 2 years of the current administration for Bola Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, and we're asking, has he done well? Perhaps maybe you could tell. Well, we have plenty of guests and our correspondents across Nigeria who are giving us 2 pence, at least each of them, on the state of affairs here in Nigeria and the current administration. We have with us from before Professor Kenneth Nweke. He is a politics and governance expert. And we also have joining us from Kaduna, that's Mark Jacob, who is a security consultant who will be talking to us about issues regarding the East. We will be joined by our News Central, or rather the North. We will be joined by our News Central correspondent, Jamil Mabai, who will be joining us from Katsina via video. But currently we have Austin Azu, who is joining in from Delta State and has been telling us the situation, or at least how it's perceived in the Niger Delta.
All right, Austin, are you there now? Austin, are you there? Can you hear me?
Austin, I'm hoping you can hear us. We had you just moments ago. If you're there and can hear us, we are looking forward to you speaking with anyone there regarding the situation. Let's get to hear from the horse's mouth what they think the situation, or how the situation, the security situation, affects them in person. So, Austin, can you hear us now? Unfortunately, I don't think he can hear us.
Let's see if we can get Prof on the line. Prof, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, Professor.
Thank you. All right. So, I mean, you have highlighted previously in your response and your assessment of the security situation in Nigeria, the role the states need to play, the huge amount being allocated. And there have been also allegations of some level of sabotage on the ground, right? Less external forces, but it's somewhat internal sabotage. What are your thoughts on that, and what's your assessment of that? How can the government or this administration address that issue?
Because you will not rule out the fact that there will be sabotage internally, you know, but how long will this sabotage continue? Of course, we have intelligence agencies, you know, even within the military. And so why would these issues around sabotage and all that, in spite of the enormity of funds? If you want to go and raid a place now, you know, you see them raid innocent people who, probably sometimes innocent people who have nothing to answer. They will raid them overnight, and then they say it's intelligence gathering and all that. So why not gather intelligence and also forestall whatever internal sabotage that we have continuously impeding on our efforts to secure Nigeria? And so it means a lot, you know, these security issues mean so much, because if from Jonathan's government onto Muhammadu Buhari's government, and then of APC 10 years, and all you hear today is about people gathering and they're talking about something that will happen in the next 2 years. It's unbelievable, even when those who are even gathering are not sure of their lives the next moment. We are talking about something about 2 years, because part of the social contract ordinarily is to protect lives and property of the citizens, and to give the citizens the best means of livelihood. There's nothing. That's what government, that's the essence of government. And so when government has failed in doing this, not just this particular government, don't get me wrong, you know, it has been recurring. And so if it has been recurring, can we sit down as a people, ask ourselves very pertinent questions? Why are we having recurring, you know, security issues in the country, in spite of anybody being saddled with this responsibility as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and the President of Nigeria? In spite of the party in power, we still have these things recurring. I mean, then why can't we have that kind of security summit where at all levels it's cascaded down to the communities, so that people will speak and see what do we do? Because these security issues are local. Because they are local, you know, solutions can also come from local. Because the people perpetrating these acts are not coming from the moon. I hear the chief of defense staff talking about borders and all. Who's controlling the border? And so if we have these infiltrations coming, from outside, it means that those who are also saddled with the responsibility of protecting our territorial integrity are also compromising, so much that we are now having these levels of infiltration in our country. So why do we have this blame game all the time? President Tinubu can't be in Abuja and protect me right in my community in Ikweremwa. No. But yes, he can, provide enabling environment because the government is paying heavily, to secure our lives ordinarily. But who should help him make these things, workable? Is the states, the local governments. And so are they, actually responsible in supporting the center to achieve, this level of security that we have in this country? They are all there, also watching them, take away the funds that belong to our people, that ought to turn around the lives of our people and protect us. And that's why the government must be blamed. Because when you release these funds to them, they say, oh, let funds go to local government. Oh, local government autonomy, no problem. But when when you get autonomy, are you able to live up to your social contract with the people, protect their lives and property, because the security issues are local. And so they can be tackled more locally than, bringing external forces, to address them. And so until, as a government at all levels, that we, are committed sincerely, genuinely in addressing these things based on our local challenges, we cannot do anything. If you like, carry the whole equipment in the whole world and spend over 10 trillion naira, nothing will happen. So until we sit down as a people, tell ourselves the truth, look at ourselves eyeball to eyeball, across communities, across local governments, across states. President Tinubu cannot be in Abuja and secure my life in Igbo. It cannot happen.
Professor Kenneth, that's a very interesting take there regarding security and how it affects you personally. Well, let's talk about the way things are in the north. Let's talk about our borders. Let's talk about our arms proliferation, our porous borders, our cross-border criminalities. Let's also talk about the fact that earlier you alluded to the fact that with the previous administration it was the same. You also alluded to the fact that it was the same party. Perhaps, I don't know, but correct me if I'm wrong, are you saying that the APC has failed, whether this administration or the previous one, when it comes to terrorism in Nigeria, especially now that we are referring to it as resurgency? Was there a time when it was ever any better? And did this administration fail its citizens when it comes to security? Professor Kenneth, please.
It's not about APC failing. Listen to me, it's about government at all levels failing us. Simple. So when you make it a party thing, then you are missing it. We are talking about government at all levels. You have even political parties that are controlling some states, of course. So what are they doing? Some of them are in APC, they are in other political parties, like Kano and others. So what are they doing to support the center? It's not about APC. Let's be very, very factual in this. The security issues that we have do not know who is a party man or who is not a party man, or who is saddled with the responsibility of doing what and not to doing what. What I have said, and I can be recorded on that, is that government at all levels in Nigeria have failed Nigerians. They have failed to live up to their social contract, whether it's APCO or whether PDPO, because Goodluck Jonathan was PDP. And what happened is this, when you talk about party, some of them who just jumped ship from one political party, to another political party today, and then you now begin to talk about party. In Nigeria, don't talk about party, talk about government, talk about individuals who are saddled with this responsibility. They are birds of the same feather, and they are flocking together. So leave party issues, but talk about government. What is the responsibility of local governments, in protecting lives and property in those places of insurgency? What is the responsibility of those states? So it's not about sitting down and looking at President Tinubu. It's not about looking at probably the past governments, Buhari and Jonathan. It's about even as individuals in those communities where we reside. How have we been able, to help protect these lives? Even though you talk about the borders that we talk about here today, So those communities that live in those border areas, how also are they helping government? Because everything is not about looking at the government. Are we playing our own responsibilities as citizens that ought to live up to our obligations to the state? But because the state has failed.
From what you're saying, it's not security is not a party issue, but it's more a local problem, right? And we should be looking at local solutions. We know that this administration has undertaken several reforms across sectors. So coming to security, there are those who have faulted the current security architecture and are calling for reforms, state policing, state security. What are your thoughts on that? Decentralizing the security architecture to the state levels for better security.
Of course, that is one way to go. But unfortunately, those who are saddled with the responsibility of leading our states as governors, as local government chairmen, would definitely abuse these security apparatus if left in their hands to administer. But the laws should be able to guide us ordinarily in checking the excesses of the governors or the local government chairmen at those levels. But unfortunately, even the federal or the central police that we have today, some politicians who have access to these ones, who have access to the center, also use these ones against their citizens. That's what are we talking about. So it's the same thing. They are on a frolic of using security apparatuses against their own citizens, when you are in power. Some of them, do all of those things. So ordinarily, one would advocate that in tackling these, problems, state police, local government police, even community policing and all that, to be able to help. But even when you are recruiting, so what's the recruitment process of these guys? You may end up recruiting people who will help to even sabotage you in the whole process and finish a whole community or a whole army of personnel and all that. And so it's important. Nigerian security problem cannot be isolated from the major problems in Nigeria, ranging from economy, majorly economy. Because when the economy, we are not getting, in fact, starting from electing our leaders, the recruitment process, the leadership recruitment process in Nigeria has failed us entirely because we are having crop of men who are there only to satisfy their whims and caprices. And so what else will they offer us? What kind of laws? They are talking about reform. Will reform protect me where I am speaking right now? Reforms are on paper. I am talking about genuine persons who offer themselves for leadership positions. I'm talking about genuine followership in Nigeria, who offer themselves to electing those who actually, will do their bidding in terms of the social contract. So, but when we fail to even hold our leaders accountable on the day of election, we accept those pockets of little handouts that they give to us on the day of election. And now we are talking about 2 years down the ladder that this administration has come on board. But people are working together, talking about, giving somebody a second term, where 2 years is still, 2 years is very far from here. In fact, the life that we live, I like what Bode George said, 2 days ago. He said, all of us have our boarding passes with us, waiting for the flight to come. And then someone asked me, he said, at 80, what does he really need? And I'm asking these politicians, what do you really need? All these years, all these things you gather without using them to ensure that our lives are protected and that you give us the best things. You borrow money and borrow money and borrow money and borrow against unborn children. What are you using them for? Will you live with them? We need to secure our lives here. We need the best form of life here. This
Professor Kenneth,
is too much.
Professor Kenneth,
it's too much.
Professor Kenneth, I'd like to ask you about the situation in River State. Now, we saw a state of emergency imposed on River State, and the reason for this was to forestall any break in order. According to the president, he wouldn't wait until it all goes to, before he acted, and that led to the state of emergency. What do you think the government's response, or do you think the government's response to the situation in River State was apt? Do you think that this was in any way, like it's being termed, draconian? Or do you think that it was rather average. What's your assessment of that situation there as security is concerned?
As far as I'm concerned, there was no security breach as at when state of emergency was declared in Rivers State. But take it or leave it. If the government had watched aloof what was happening between the State House of Assembly and the governor, and the drama was unfolding, what would have happened? Let me tell you for free. These guys would have gathered one day, secured by police or security agencies very well, and they will carry out the nefarious act of impeaching the governor, and then he should go to court by hook or crook, even without following the process. I just tell you, give you that one for free.
So when you compare that, Professor, so when you compare what had transpired before, now I'm asking that when you compare what had transpired before the state of emergency was declared, we had talks of pipelines being blown up and the rest, which eventually was actually disproven. When you compare that potentially to what's been happening inside of the... Say again, Professor?
Sorry. Yes. When Ibas came, the first day he came, after 24 hours that the emergency was declared, I expected him to run to Goriland, where the explosion happened. Did he go there?
Good question.
And I have not so heard that he had been there.
Good question.
Has he been there? That thing that caused the emergency. Well, has he been there? You, reporters and other journalists. Why not ask them?
It's a good question you're asking, Professor Kenneth. But Professor Kenneth,
has he been there? Hang on, please. Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. If a state of emergency was declared, and the major reason was, on our, national infrastructure pipeline, major one, Trans-Niger Delta pipeline, EMP. I get what I'm saying. The first place from the airport, he would ride to the scene of the place, and then we will see military presence all over the place, to begin to chase, these, companies one way or the other. Please, and for me, I am seeing the emergency rule only to have addressed in the interim what would have ensued between the Rivers State House of Assembly and the governor's, supporters. That's what it avoided, as far as I'm concerned. Right. But any other thing was purely political and, not in line, with our law. Because what would have happened best was to deploy security presence in Rivers State to forestall breakdown of law and order, and not to remove the State House of Assembly in terms of suspension of the governor. The democratic structures ought not to have been taught, but would have seen heavy presence of security in Rivers State to forestall any attempt. Rather than do that, what we saw was somebody busy, trying to remove political office holders and dismantling all democratic structures in the name. So where lies the explosion on the TMP?
So Professor Kenneth, you're saying that it was not a response, it was an actual premeditated act. Is that what you're saying? The state of emergency.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was for me.
So it's not a security measure per se.
The government did not handle the state of emergency well. All that they would have said clearly that the government was foreseeing a breakdown of law and order between the State House of Assembly and the governor's supporters. Okay. And so in order to forestall that, there is a state of emergency declared. And then you now have presence of military or security in Rivers State to protect life and property, but not to bring somebody to administer my commonwealth, my children's commonwealth anyhow. And I don't know. Now they have sent budget to National Assembly. I don't know what comes to my community that I have over 200 oil and gas wells in Chase, and I have no roads to go to my place. So what budget are they defending in the National Assembly that they have passed second reading? So what efforts did I make any input in that budget? So do I know what is in that budget? And so you remove the democratic structure in the name of TMP and all of those. For me, it's unacceptable, but for what is acceptable to me is that, it avoided the cure
between these two factors.
Okay.
And that's where I want to justify what the government did, but not removing or suspending the democratic structure, because if you like, the thing is that the Supreme Court, of course, we can't not do anything, but we don't need Supreme Court to rule before we know what is against the law.
Professor Kenneth,
black and white.
Professor Kenneth, I still haven't finished that question that I started out asking, but your entry there is noted. But I was trying to ask, perhaps maybe if you could compare the response in terms of the state of emergency that was imposed on Rivers State with the kind of response that we got when it was the case of Okwama, for instance, where we had military personnel go into a town and totally destroy the entire place. Questions are still being asked out there whether anybody's been brought to book on both sides, because from before it was the case of army personnel being killed. We haven't heard much about this, and I'm wondering what your take is on the matter of that case when it comes to security in the Niger Delta.
Okay, bringing security personnel to invade the place. Is that what they're asking?
Yes, I'm asking the presidency's response to the situation when you compare the Rivers State issue with the state, with the Okwama instance.
Of course, they are different now. So when when the state of emergency was declared, ordinarily people were afraid, to leave, for their houses that night. They were thinking that there would be heavy presence of security everywhere. But of course, the state was peaceful. Even the IPAS admitted that the place was peaceful. So for me, I've told you, it's just that the way the government handled it and the communication was bad. If you had said that you are vaccinating a cure, that would have happened, and that's why I declared state of emergency. Not to bring in the issue of TMP and all of those. It's understandable for me, because if this state was allowed to run the way it was running, we would have been running by now. And so declaring state of emergency was a bit justified, but not conceding the fact that the democratic structures were tampered with.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Kenneth Nweke, for joining us on the conversation, assessing the security situation in Nigeria over the past 2 years under the President Bola Tinubu's administration. Professor Kenneth Nweke is a professor of politics and governance, joining us from Port Harcourt, Rivers State. We'll continue with this assessment, touching on energy after this break.
And we have a situation report here from Abuja. We are going to be joined by Joshua Imirai, who is bringing us a situation report happening right now. Appeal Court has dismissed Ighodalo's petition against Okpewolo. The Court of Appeal has dismissed the petition by PDP's Aswa Ighodalo challenging the victory of APC's Monday Okpewolo in the Edo State governorship elections. Now, the court ruled that the petition lacked merit, noting that Ighodalo failed to prove allegations of irregularities or non-compliance with the Electoral Act. It held that no credible witnesses or vital electoral materials were presented, making the case speculative. Joining us now is our correspondent from Abuja, Joshua Imirai. Joshua, good afternoon. Please, if you can bring us up to speed on what we are hearing happening right now.
Well, good afternoon to you, Mazino. I am live at the Court of Appeal in Abuja, where a three-member panel of justice led by Justice Mohammed dismissed the appeal filed by the Edo State, by the PDP candidate in the Edo State governorship election, that is the person of Aswa Ighodalo, against the current governor of Edo State, that is the person of Monday Okpewolo. Well, the court found several issues in the appeal filed by the PDP and Aswa Ighodalo, one of which is the heavy reliance on the Form EC2B. The court stated that the appellant was saying and said that they relied heavily on the Form EC2B, 25B, and that there was no other legal document to support their claims of alleged irregularities and non-compliance of the Electoral Act. However, the court found that that particular assertion to be wrong, saying that there were other forms, particularly EC40A and EC48A, and other recognized forms as regards the conduct of election. The court also went ahead to find that the presentation of screenshot of the Beavers machine were not authenticated, and that they lacked legal timestamp. They're just taking pictures or screenshots of extracts of beavers was not enough to prove their case in this appeal. However, the court also went further to state that the witnesses they brought, that is the witness PW2 to PW10, were not polling unit agents and were not competent enough to prove their case of election irregularities, saying that they were not there direct manufacturers of the document, and there were not parties or witnesses who were there in several polling units that these documents were manufactured. The court also went ahead to discountenance their testimony. And on the beavers machine, well, in the cross appeal filed by the APC, they held that the beavers machine was not submitted to the court according to the laws guiding election petition tribunal. The court faulted the appellants in this case, that is the PDP, for not tendering them in compliance with the provision of the laws governing election, that they were tendered to the court without the consent of the parties involved. The court further went to say that this was just them testing the waters to see if they could prove their case in court, that they did not really have any substantive evidence to prove that the election was marred by irregularities. The court also faulted their prayer, saying that they should nullify the election and declare their candidate, that is the person of Asue Godalo, the rightful winner of the election. The court told them that they cannot tell them to render the election invalid and also pray them to uphold their candidate, that is the person of Asue Godalo, as winner of the election. So that is where we are in this case.
One last question before I let you go, Joshua. Has there been any response from any of the parties involved, especially the Ighodalo camp, that's the PDP? I know it's too soon, but have you heard anything?
Well, shortly after the judgment, the PDP chairman, that is the person of Tony Azegbemi, briefed newsmen and said from the countenance of the judge that they were, according to him, that they were reading without reading from the paper, saying they were just saying their statement. It shows even alleged bias in the sides of the judges. He however, said that the party is not dying down, is not trying to, the party would not die down its opposition as to regards to this judgment, that they were going to head to the Supreme Court to challenge the outcome of the Court of Appeal. They, however, urged all their party faithful and loyalists to be calm and temperate in the time being, subsequently, that they were going to head to the Supreme Court to challenge the outcome of this court.
I want to say thank you very much for bringing us the outcome of the Edo election issue going on there in court. We'll continue to come to you for more details regarding the situation. Thank you very much once again, Joshua.
Electricity is the bedrock upon which economies, security, and all of that, is upheld. So we're heading into this final segment where we assess how this administration has fared in terms of providing electricity for the people, affordable electricity tariffs, and so much more, as well as renewable energy efforts, considering the direction that the world is heading. We have this special package for you, and after that, we'll dive into the conversation.
The removal of fuel subsidy, specifically on petrol, was President Bola Tinubu's first major policy decision, announced during his inauguration speech on May 29, 2023, and which seems to have defined his administration's blueprint in the energy sector.
No provision is there for fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is gone.
This policy led to an immediate surge in petrol price, escalating from approximately 185 naira per litre in 2023 to over 1,025 naira per litre in 2024. The aftermath of the removal has seen many Nigerians grappling with increased transportation and general living costs.
You can see bus fare increasing every single time, and people just increasing goods. You can't even go to the market anymore to buy what you used to buy some years back with a certain amount of money. Now it's more expensive.
It's easy to access fuel now compared in the past. We normally queue for fuel in the past, but now we can access the fuel, but the cost is too much.
Fuel is everywhere now, and it's reducing. If we are into transport business, we should be in the position to tell you the truth. So the transportation, it's okay, and the fuel price is reducing now, and it's available everywhere. That's the most important thing.
It's available, but it's too cost.
On the industrial front, the Dangote refinery, which commenced operations in May 2023, was projected to achieve full operational capacity within 30 days as of February 2025. The federal government under President Tinubu also ramped up measures to revamp the nation's refineries, which had been moribund for years. So far, only the old Port Harcourt refinery has been successfully revived.
Fuel subsidy, even from the testimonies of a number of those governors, as free of a chunk of money, it now enables most of those states to be solvent again. They are paying salaries. They no longer struggle to pay salaries. Some have been getting overdraft to pay salaries that I'm aware of. If anybody is saying the government is not popular because of the subsidy removal, maybe those who are benefiting directly. We had too many subsidies in the energy sector that was dragging the country down.
Turning attention to the issue of power supply, one significant plan by the administration is the Presidential Metering Initiative, PMI, launched in 2024. The PMI aims to deploy over 5 million smart meters by 2027, enhancing revenue assurance and reducing electricity theft. But what impact has this had?
What's the business of the federal government procuring meters when they can create an enabling environment for meter manufacturers in Nigeria or meters to be assembled in Nigeria, when the discos, as a matter of fact, are the ones with statutory obligation of providing those meters?
President Tinubu expedited the Siemens Power Project, a collaboration with Germany's Siemens AG, aiming to increase Nigeria's electricity generation capacity from 4,000 megawatts to 25,000 megawatts within 6 years. This project encompasses grid modernization, equipment upgrades, and engineer training.
But several years down the lane, nothing much has been achieved. We are still like 5,000 plus that we've always been, even after decades of privatization. We're still struggling. We have to come fully on stream. It will have advanced the power sector infrastructure. It's not abandoned yet, but it's rather slow in achieving its target.
In terms of policy reforms, the government considered removing electricity subsidies for 15% of consumers to reduce the 3.3 trillion naira annual subsidy cost. While this move aims to alleviate fiscal pressures, it has raised concerns about potential increases in electricity tariffs and the consequent impact on consumers amid the unending grid collapse.
They tell that you're on band A and then you are just having you are having less than 12 hours electricity, and then or 16 hours, not even up to 20 hours. And then if you are mistaken and then you have those 20 hours, the bills that come after it, trust me.
We have seen changes, and it's almost 2 years now. It has been in the power. But 2 months ago, we have seen changes, but increment in the bill is alarming.
Concern. Things are getting better. Let me just put it that way. When it comes to electricity, things are getting better. At least we can say we can enjoy electricity. If not 24 hours, we about 15 hours a day or 12 hours a day, and it's still improving compared to before when the other administration was in power. But things are improving now.
I've seen a little changes, but the changes is not just like that. Anyway, he attracts more additional charges, of which common people cannot avoid it.
During the last ministerial scorecard briefing at the presidential villa, the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, announced a major initiative. The minister outlined plans to regionalize the national grid via the Eastern and Western supergrid frameworks to strengthen the grid's resilience against disturbances. But how achievable is this?
I would say, okay, we can expand the grid infrastructure while focusing extensively on off-grid solutions and renewables. Off-grid, like captive, embedded generation that wouldn't need to be transmitted. You can do mini-grid. One community like Lake can have their own infrastructure that things, so we don't need mega grid anymore.
Despite these efforts, the power sector continues to grapple with issues such as infrastructure deficit and financial constraints. While the government remains optimistic about its energy sector reforms, the economic strain on Nigerians is undeniable. Will these policies yield long-term benefits, or will the hardships continue? Only time will tell. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
All right, a comprehensive report from our news correspondent there, Bettina. And now we do have Abba Aliu joining us, the MD CEO of the Rural Electrification Agency. It's great to have you in.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And of course, from that report, one of the last points made there was about the off-grid solutions being preferred and renewable energy solutions. You're no novice in this sector. Though you were appointed MD CEO earlier this year, you have been in the sector for quite a while. Give us a picture of what your agency has been doing to address accessibility and these renewable alternatives.
Very much. From our own perspective, there was never a time where the government focused on the renewable energy like what we are witnessing at the moment. It is on record that this government, when the president came in, one of the first things he did was to approve the biggest renewable energy funding for the sector, which is the biggest public sector funded project in the entire world. A $750 million funding that will crystallize a private sector funding of about $1.1 billion. From India, there's never any country in the world that has developed a structured approach of ending energy poverty like what we are implementing at this moment. The program is targeting to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians by deploying 1,350 mini grids, of which 250 of them will be interconnected mini grids. And this project had already started. We are currently deploying 42 interconnected mini grids, working with 7 distribution companies. And we also have started signing grant agreements with renewable energy service companies for the deployment of the isolated mini grids. And also have signed grant agreement with 8 solar home system companies, deployment companies, for the deployment of over 1 million solar home systems communities or rural areas that are sparsely populated and their consumption is very low. This is one key thing that is happening in the renewable energy. So beyond the funding and also this implementation framework of implementing the DES project, under the leadership of President, also we have catalyzed the ecosystem of the renewable energy service company. Now in the whole West Africa, there is no country that has an ecosystem for renewable energy service companies that have developed competency in deploying renewable infrastructure, attracting financing, and also engaging talent in the country, which currently they are even exporting this to other African countries. We are also domesticating the localization of this renewable energy manufacture in the country. Currently, the country has 600 megawatt capacity of PV panels manufacturing. Works is underway for the also establishment of lithium battery assembly plant in Lagos, Ikotun, Lekki, zone. So all these are happening, and it can never be this better than what is currently happening in the country when it comes to renewable energy.
To ask you this question about the challenges that are being faced when it comes to accessibility for renewable energy. What challenges have you faced? In the past 2 years, many have argued that there's been so much talked about the removal of subsidy and that it's going to go into other sectors, and renewable energy is one of them. But they've complained that they don't see these benefits come to the, regular man down the line. Is 2 years too short a time to be expecting that it should have reached every single nook and cranny in Nigeria?
There are a number of people that are saying that they have not seen the intervention, but there are also significant number of people that will tell you that they have seen this intervention. So, and I give you an example. If you go to Calabar, for example, currently, university and the teaching hospital are now being powered by our 7 megawatt utility hybrid mini grid. If you go to University of Port Harcourt, you will see the massive infrastructure that we are doing at about 11 megawatt. Or you go to University of Maiduguri, you will see one of the biggest hybrid mini in West Africa, a 12 megawatt powering the university, the teaching hospital, and now we are doing an analysis to extend the excess capacity to power the water treatment plant powering the entire Maiduguri metropolitan. Or if you go to Ibaragun, a community that is between Lagos and Ogun State, you will see a 1 megawatt connected mini grid powering the entire community. Or you go to Abuja, before going to after the airport, before you head into the town, there are communities there, Kilankwa and Peti. You will see 4 mini grids that are powering these communities. Or you go to another community in Peti that has been in existence for 100 years without any electricity, and for the first time they are now enjoying electricity under this government. A lot is going in. A lot has been done. We have deployed over 200 mini grids across the country, and we are still working towards that. In our intervention, for example, in critical sectors, apart from the 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals, as we completed it, we already now have started another intervention in 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital, which we are about to start commissioning in the next 2 months.
Okay.
And as we are
now, Mr. Aliyu, Mr. Aliyu, now I'm enjoying that you are reeling out these efforts and where we can actually find them. About the Abaragun installation, I think I have actually witnessed that one not too long ago. So that was very impressive. However, to speed accessibility up to get to especially the rural communities, or maybe just the average Nigerian, what partnerships or reforms are being considered by the government that could see this happen maybe before the end of the administration of the current administration of Bola Tinubu? Are there any attractive investor reforms that are in place?
Oh, absolutely. So the funding that we have, the $750 million that the president approved, it's to catalyze private sector investment and to target the 17.5 million Nigerians that I told you about. This is, like I told you, this is the only country apart from India that has done a structured means of creating electricity access in the entire world. But even beyond that, we are also in discussion with JICA for additional funding of about $200 million to target 1.830 million Nigerians as well. So what this government is doing, apart from crystallizing the funding public funding that would incentivize private sector funding. We also design operational framework for the implementation. And we are also now being conscious of domesticating the manufacturing in country to create more jobs. And beyond that, we are also looking into creating more job opportunities. Just last week, Rural Electrification Agency under the Minister of Power and the NAPTIM, the National Power Training Institute, created 130 job opportunities, unprecedented, at a go. All these 130 youth that have gone through a process have been offered by this RESCO. So this is all the kind of things that are happening. And we also gotten approval to create renewable energy asset management company that would ensure the sustainability of intervention. And this asset management company would where this hybrid mini grid and use that on its balance sheet to create more funding and ensure operation and maintenance of all the mini grids that we are deploying in the country. It can never be this good, I tell you, when it comes to renewable energy.
All right, Mr. Aliyu, I have one more question for you, but I'm going to go on a break. We're going to go on a break, and when we come back, we'll ask that last question, and then perhaps we'll let you go. But just hang on for the break, and to our viewers, we'll be right back.
2 years in on the Bola Tinubu administration, we are providing some sort of assessment on his performance, this time around focusing on energy. We have joining us Abba Aliyu, the MD CEO of the Rural Electrification Agency. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you, Johan.
Yes. Of course, you have rolled out a lot that your agency and the government is doing, and the partnerships it's engaging to provide access, renewable energy specifically to rural communities. And speaking of developments under this administration, we know that there was a proposal earlier in the year to ban solar imports. What are your thoughts on that, especially considering the operations of the Rural Electrification Agency?
Yeah, so from our own perspective, just with some context, a lot of money, roughly 200 billion naira, has been utilized on yearly basis to importation of PV panels alone, not taking into account inverters and batteries. Not only that, when we look at numbers, in the last decade, the renewable energy space created about 14.7 million jobs. Out of these jobs, 7.6 million were created within China, and Brazil created about 1.5, India 1 million, the entire Europe about 1.2 million. The African continent created only 320,000 of these jobs, and Nigeria, the country with the highest number of people that are without electricity access, only created 70,000 of these jobs, which means that we are using our challenge to create job opportunities for other countries in the world. So what we are saying that is it comes to a time that there is need for country now to be direct in making sure that we put in place strategies and framework to make sure that we utilize some of these opportunities rather than outsourcing our efforts, outsourcing our jobs in the country. So what we are doing is making sure that while we continue to do the importation, we ensure that we are conscious and putting in place system that will make sure that PV panels are manufactured in Nigeria, batteries are manufactured or assembled in Nigeria, so that significant number of these jobs that we are outsourcing have been done in Nigeria. And many countries have done it. India has done it. Turkey recently did the anti-dumping policy, which prevented the importation of PV panels, and many of the Chinese companies now go to China and establish their manufacturing outfit. And that is the same thing that we want to do in Nigeria. I'm not saying that we would do outright banning, but we will make sure that we use the lack of access to create in Nigeria. And like I told you already, it has started happening. We currently have 600 megawatt capacity of manufacturing. One company is here in Lagos in Ikotun with 100 megawatt capacity, another one in Idu in Abuja was 250, and another one was 150 is coming up also in Abuja. We will need to drive that till we domesticate the manufacture and value for the country, enhance our gross domestic product, and create job opportunities. And that is why we are consciously, hand in hand, creating talent so that these manufacturers that will come and invest will have the technical skill and competencies they needed to ensure this manufacturing has continued. And that is why we created the Resco Next model, whereby we train youth that are of interest in the renewable energy that this manufacturing outfit can leverage on to unlock their own investment and create their own factories in Nigeria. That's exactly what we are doing, and that is the position of government.
We're not exporting our wealth, we're keeping it within, trying to create more opportunities in the renewable space. Before we let you go, 2 years in, 2 more years to go. Give us a picture of what we can expect from an agency like yours in partnership with the government in the 2 years ahead.
We are going to see a country that would be the renewable hub of Africa. We are not just like I said, we would take advantage of our challenge. So Nigeria will be the renewable hub in the next 2 years. We are going to squarely address the access gap. We will reduce significantly the number of people that are without electricity. You will see massive deployment of isolated mini-grids and interconnected mini-grids across the country. You will see massive training of youth in the renewable space. You will see the emergence of many renewable energy service companies that will serve in future as alternative or complement what the distribution companies are doing. We want to reach to a situation where, for example, India is currently doing, where you even have the option to say, this is that you would decide where your source of energy will come from, whether it will come the renewable energy or from the main grid. We will reach to that. We will see also in the next few years will have massive companies that will be investing massively in the manufacturing of renewable energy. We signed an MOU with Owando for the 1 gigawatt capacity. We are going to sign a joint development agreement with Infraco for 1 also gigawatt capacity, and we are in the discussion with Red Star, a Chinese company that will come and establish 2 gigawatt PV panels manufacturing capacity. So Nigeria would take its position as the renewable hub, addressing our own challenge, creating jobs, and exporting also our technical competence to other African countries. This is what is going to happen under the leadership of Mr. President.
Right, we look forward to that. More exports than imports. Thank you very much for joining us, Abba Aliyu, the MD CEO of the Rural Electrification Agency.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Indeed. Now, we're going to be moving on as we'll be speaking to News Central correspondent Jamil Mabai, who's joining us from Katsina. First off, however, let's go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue on with that conversation. Welcome back. 2 years down the line for the Bola Tinubu administration, 730 days. How well or badly have they fared? We're talking to guests and also our correspondents across Nigeria. We're being joined now by News Central correspondent Jamil Mabai, who is in Katsina. Jamil, you're welcome. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Jamil. Jamil, we have just come off of a conversation with Mr. Abba Aliyu, MD CEO, Rural Electrification Agency, and he gave us such interesting achievements that the agency has been doing. And while we're coming to you to talk to us about the electricity supply in the Northwest, if I'm not mistaken, yes, in the Northwest, I want to know first up whether there are any initiatives like the solar power driven initiatives or maybe the windmill one that has been happening in Katsina State.
Okay, yeah. Just to bring you up to speed or on board on what's happening, with regard to the windmill project, as a federal government project that has been existing for the past 15 years now. It started during the former late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, and now the state governor is trying to see how the federal government can transfer the project back to the state government, because he has shown interest in completing the project, and he has also shown interest. He has also told the people that there are a lot of investors who are willing to come and invest their money in the Rainy Wind project. But with regards to the power supply in the entire Northwest under the current administration of President Bola Tinubu, the Northwest and in Katsina particularly, the provision of power supply is very poor. In the past 2 days, residents have been complaining, and students in particular have been complaining. And one incidents that even happened, I got to learn, a few moments before joining that, students had to write their WAEC English in darkness yesterday due to the lack of power supply. But with me, it's one of Katsina residents. Maybe you can hear from him. His name is Hamza. So please, can you tell us your name, and can you tell us briefly, in terms of power supply, what can you say it's happening in Katsina?
Firstly, my name is Hamza Umar Sola. I'm from Katsina. Honestly speaking, when you talk about the power, I think I can say it's quite unfortunate. The issue of power supply is very poor. But we do hope that Katsina, we are very lucky. We have abundant sunlight and we have abundant wind. And all the sunlight and the wind are other sources of generating power. But unfortunately, when you talk about power, you cannot even have one complete hour power supply in the state.
How has that affected businesses, in your own opinion, and maybe students going to university?
It affects the entire lives of all Katsina State citizens, because when you go to hospital, the patients are always crying. Many doctors cannot even do their work properly because of the power outage. And at the same time, when you go to the business activities, small scale industries have already closed their own industries because of the shortage of power. Even when you look at the business activities in Katsina State, has already changed. Nothing is going well.
In terms of hours, how many hours of light do you get in a day?
I think some areas will get 2 hours, some 3 hours. The highest is 3 hours. But other areas, they can spend the whole week without having 1 minute power supply. And when you talk about students, even yesterday, my own daughter write her English. English is one of the most important subjects. But unfortunately, due to the power problem, she wrote her English in darkness using ordinary smartphone touchlight to write her examination.
So I think this, you've heard from one of the residents here who summarizes and even shared a very disturbing, scenario regarding his daughter happens, writing her exam in darkness. She has to use, the touchlight to her smartphone so that she can write her paper. So, Mazi, in terms of power supply, provision of power supply is very poor here in Katsina. But we're hoping, and the state governor is hoping, that the federal government will fast track the transfer of the windmill project, Rini, and other solar initiatives, given the fact that Katsina and Northwest have abundant sunlight and wind in abundance.
Well, Jamil, it's a very worrying picture you paint there with the individual who has just spoken regarding how power actually affects education here, his daughter writing her exams in darkness. We heard about that from other parts of the country, so apparently it's not just from the Niger Delta, also happening inside of Katsina. There's also very interesting intersections here, how power affects businesses, and then it got me thinking, how does it affect healthcare? Because for healthcare, you absolutely need power, so I'm wondering how the healthcare facilities there in Katsina are run.
The healthcare facilities, now what the state government has done to bridge that gap is to, empower them with solar power units. But these solar generating, panels, they have capacity. There are other machineries, surgical machineries that these solar panels cannot power. And that is one of the, pressing issues, as he has pointed out, that, hospitals, some of the patients, you see them struggling, in the words with no light. So this is one of the issues. And, but I believe probably the state government is working to address that. But the federal government has to do more in terms of, distribution of these power supplies across the Northwestern, and in particular, these hospitals. And probably if the government can at least, move these hospitals to maybe trunk A, band or what have you, maybe that can really help in terms of the power supply. But, I cannot say anything further apart from what you just heard from, Comrade Saulawa, who painted that picture and summarizes the whole scenario for you.
Well, Jamil Mabai, thank you very much, bringing us that from information from Katsina State to the northwest of Nigeria. We'll continue to come to you for these information. Of course, the scorecard continues even after we have left here, but we still have an hour, myself and Joanna. That's to the viewers there. Thank you very much, Jamil. We're going to take a very short break now, and when we come back, we're going to be switching gears. Only this time, we talk education.
Years of the President Bola Tinubu administration, we have done some sort of assessment across various sectors. Now we are coming to education. And of course, this president has been defined as some sort of reformist when it comes to, his policies, right? But what reforms has he brought to the education sector? We take this brief report from News Central's Omolola Omolade. She cuts us across investments in educational infrastructure, accreditation standards, and curriculum, as well as teacher training, amongst others.
Education loan will be available. 4 years course will be 4 years course.
It's halfway through President Bola Tinubu's 4-year tenure, and Nigerians, especially students and tutors, have been assessing the promises made by the president to strengthen the education sector. For some Nigerians, particularly students, the sector has not fared well under Tinubu's administration in the past 2 years.
The school had to increase the bills and everything. Normally, someone that I know that was in 100 level before, she was paying at less than 150,000. I paid over 200,000, apart from departmental fees and everything. So I feel the whole thing, him coming in, the currency we use, apart from naira, depreciating. So I feel he needs to invest more in education, because if you want the country to be good, at least the educational aspect has to be very, very strong.
I've not seen any nice change, because it's still the same. They don't increase the faculties, nothing like that. Everything is still the same as it was before. Even now, the online class stuff, they are even increasing the school fees. I am not seeing the effect yet. So I don't. If the hostel fees today they've tripled it now. And the hostels, they still look, even they've renovated it, but it still kind of looks the same than before.
For several years, the education sector has been getting allocation of less than 10% of the national budget. In 2025, it has received 3.52 trillion naira, which is about 7.3% of the year's funding. Experts believe these need to change.
Lecturers are badly paid, not only at the tertiary level, but also primary and secondary levels. They were badly paid. It's important that government that desire to have, to develop growth and development must ensure that more funds are given to the education sector and even the health sector.
The United Nations recommended that nations allocate at least 20% of their national budget to achieve universal, inclusive and equitable education for all by 2030, a target the Minister of Education says the country is working tirelessly to achieve.
We are debating academic institutions, 15 billion naira investment in building hostels, at the new hostel of each of these institutions.
Nigeria's inflation rate, according to the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics for 2023, is at 25.8%, unemployment at 4.1%, and over 70 million Nigerians suffering from extreme poverty. These have adversely affected the education system, which currently have over 10 million out-of-school children, and a funding challenge that affects those in schools.
When they do annual school census, they don't count children in the non-approved schools. So UNESCO count them as out-of-school children. That's for Lagos, the South. When you go to the North, children attend Alimajiri school, they attend Shangaya school. Because they are not attending conventional schools, they don't count them. So, at the end of the day, an average number of children that are schooling in a state, they are rated as out of school. Why? Because they don't have their data.
However, the running of federal government secondary schools, otherwise known as unity schools, solely rely on the government. While many have complained about the deplorable state of these schools, the government thinks otherwise.
Because of the complaint we have had, we have put it in the budget a lot of money, 60 to 80 billion for the renovation of our federal unity colleges, and this will soon implement once we start implementing the budget. All our unity colleges, 100 plus that we have, are going to be run.
Funding remains a major challenge for tertiary institutions in Nigeria, affecting the provision of critical infrastructure required for learning, particularly power supply. Last year, several universities could not pay their electricity bills. In August 2024, the Eco Electricity Distribution Company disconnected the University of Lagos after it failed to pay almost 500 million naira electricity debt.
Universities, government cannot fund you. Go out and find IGR to sustain your system. Then the same government comes back and says, yes, you are helping us to take care of our children, but we're going to put you on the highest tariff that exists in the land.
Several tertiary institutions have resorted to alternative sources of funding, placing a higher burden on students as fees skyrocketed by 100% in many cases. The result of that have been protests in parts of the country by students to kick against the increases in fees.
If somebody doesn't feel comfortable, or if he or she feels that he or she is not is paying more than what he or she bargained for, then he or she can actually protest.
Despite severe funding shortfalls, the Tinubu administration has continued to establish new educational institutions made up of 22 new universities, 33 new polytechnics and monotechnics, with 12 colleges of education according to JAMB. Prompting the question, does the approval of 65 new institutions solve the problem of access to tertiary institutions in Nigeria?
For access and political gain, I think the government should look into the direction of what type of institution. We should be looking at citing specialized institutions based on the comparative advantage of each area.
In addition, finding lecturers to teach in these institutions remain a major challenge, especially in the face of the mass resignation of lecturers from Nigeria's tertiary institutions.
Where all professors are there, it has a business committee, which we call BICOS, who will take a closer look at the grades and all that and raise issues. A number of our colleagues have been sanctioned for some kind of laxity in the way they handle their results. So, but if you don't have these institutional checks, you can predict what will happen. So I think that that's what is happening in some private universities. Not all. We can't generalize, because some of them are really doing well.
Besides the establishment of new institutions, the student loan scheme is a major policy of President Tinubu that is touted to address the issue of access to tertiary education. However, the policy has come under scrutiny over alleged irregularities.
The government was very much interested in coming up with this policy and scoring political point, and in ensuring that there's a box that has already been ticked with respect to the achievement of the administration. And that's why we are seeing the crisis that has bedeviled the student loan scheme.
Education remains one of the key factors that drive economic growth. Nigerians are watching to see how the policies by the Tinubu-led administration will reposition the country's educational system for global competition. In Lagos, for News Central, Omolola Ololade.
Finally, on the topic that's hot on people's lips, as we've been talking about JAM or WAEC and the conditions with which children have been writing these exams over the past couple of weeks. And now, joining us, we are going to be talking with two very interesting guests. First off, we will be speaking with Professor David Awurawa, a lecturer at the University of Lagos. I'm being told that we don't have him yet, as the connection might have gone off, but we also have with us Professor Yemi Fawahimi. He's an educationist and he joins us from Maryland in the US. Professor Yemi, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Happy Democracy Day, or whatever name we choose to call it.
I'll remind you what it is. It's a 2-year halfway mark assessment of the current administration of President Bola Tinubu. And we're glad that you can join us to talk about education in Nigeria. Now, I'm very sure you've been hearing about the reforms and the situations that we have here in Nigeria. But from a person who's outside of the country, what is the perception of the Nigerian education system?
Okay, thanks. Great question. Really nice question to ask. I think for us to really talk about the Nigerian educational system, we must look at the system. Now, I mean, there is an academic definition of the word system. The system is diverse units working together to achieve the same objective. So part of the educational system is the teaching materials, is the infrastructure, is the policy, is the curriculum. The question to ask, because your question was about the educational system. For it to be a system, all of these sub-components must be working out together to achieve the same objective. Can we say that is what is currently happening? No. That is not what is currently happening. So you see today, for example, a policy may be made in one part of the educational system that doesn't favor the other system. Or some decisions may be taken that may favor one and not favor the other. So for now, we don't yet have a system of education. We have an educational sector which describes everything that is related to education. But when you talk about a system, which is the subunits working together to achieve the same objective, and don't forget, the objective of education is the reform of the individual, right? The reformation comes from knowledge, from skills, from competency development, and from culture, which the person imbibes either in forms of character or values that he gets. Are we getting that now? No. And that's why you hear people complain, for example, they hired a graduate of English or a graduate of whatsoever, and they are surprised the person cannot speak good English, or they hired somebody who studied computer science and the person cannot operate a computer because the system has not worked together to deliver the objective of the system. And perhaps one of the biggest problems is that we really don't have a definition of what the education system should produce. A couple of years back, France took a decision and said their educational system, by the time you use certain number of years, you will become French because of your interaction with the educational system. So they taught you the language, they taught you the values, they taught you the civics. The goal is that the educational system will make you French. While you were born French, they rely on the educational system to make you French. We don't have anything like that. So that's why today you'll see a child in Lagos attend a school and they say it's fashioned after the British curriculum. A few kilometers down the road, another child attends a school, they say it's American curriculum. Then a child down the road attends a Nigerian curriculum. If we have children attending various curricula in terms of education in Nigeria, those children will not all become Nigerians because the curriculum is French, is English, is American. Until when we define what is the purpose of the Nigerian educational system, the system will never work because each component will not know its contribution to achieve the goal of that system.
Thank you very much for that, Professor David. We also have Professor Yemi Fawahimi.
Hang on a second. We got it the other way. Now, this is Professor Yemi. Our apologies. We have joining us Professor David Awurawa.
All right.
I hope that we've got that connection now. Professor David Awurawa, are you with us now?
Yes, I'm on. I can hear you.
All right, great. So now,
good afternoon. Thanks.
Yeah, pleasure to have you in, Professor David. You've heard from Professor Yemi about the lack of a system. He calls it a sector. You are within that sector or system. What are your thoughts on this, right? And the need for, I mean, he also spoke about the need to define what this sector or system should produce. What are your thoughts on where and how this administration has fared in that regard?
Well, I'll begin by saying that there is a system. It is just that the system is not effective. There are different components of the education sector in Nigeria, which, are working, interfacing, and doing what education should do, teaching, learning, skills acquisition, character, and all of that. The problem is that the system is not effective because of some lapses in the way it is structured. And it is those lapses that will need to be addressed for the sector to be effective. Let me just begin with one of the issues raised in the course of the reports. And that is the issue of power in the universities, and by extension, teaching hospitals and the rest of them. When these bands, band A, band B, and the rest of them were introduced, there was a government position that higher institutions of learning, teaching hospitals will not be affected. They will remain, the grade B or C or whatever, to enable them to be able to cope with the payment of bills. That is considered social service to the education sector that the government was going to take care of. But all of a sudden, the Minister of Power just woke up one morning and said all the schools have gone to band A. And the bills of all the universities, like University of Lagos, went from 100 million, 130, 40 million to 300 and something, 400 million. Of course, which it is not sustainable for the universities. And some of them had their power cut off and all that. Somewhere along the line, the government came in and said, okay, they will attend to the problem. The schools will not pay half of that band A to relieve them of the burden, the burden of payment. Those comments were made 6 months ago. Up till now, nothing has happened. You ask yourself, what is the minister doing? How does he exist as a minister when this problem that is so fundamental to the existence of the universities and by extension teaching hospitals has not been addressed? And I hear the minister talking about, if you read sociology or if you study philosophy or psychology, those courses are not important or even that they are useless. A society is an integrated entity, of course, a system, and the education sector too is a system. If you have if everybody studies computer science, engineering, and you make all the money, and there is nobody to address the social problems, it will be a society in dysfunction. So you need a philosopher, you need sociology, you need a psychologist, you need every bit of all of this to be able to make the society functional and the development we seek to be achieved. So there is a system, but the problem is the system is not well managed, and so it is not able to achieve the objectives that it should achieve. One other thing to comment on, as far as this is concerned, is the issue of curriculum. In recent times we had a new curriculum, they call CCMAT, that is plus, but the focus is on skills acquisition. They are injecting a whole lot of those of skills acquisition into the university system, the College of Technology, and the rest of them, which is good. It will enable students to be able to acquire skills that will make them useful and relevant, when they leave school. This is an adjustment in line with contemporary needs, where the intrinsic value of the person, what you have to offer, is what is important, and not anything else. So there are, changes here and there that are being carried out with a view to fulfilling the broad objective of what education should fulfill. What I think is even more fundamental than the issue of whether it's a system or not is what we call superstructure. The superstructure and the substructure. The superstructure, that is the government itself, has so many flaws. The society is not, it is not developed. after 50, 60 years of independence, our industrial capacity is very low. So people graduate from school and they don't get a job. Not necessarily that they don't have skills to be able to work. When the minister said, people study sociology, psychology, and the rest of them are not relevant, go and study computer science and electrical engineering and all that. We have hundreds of thousands of people studying electrical engineering with skill who don't have jobs. That defeats that comment. So that arises from the superstructure.
Now, Professor David, while we are on this is a question I wanted to come to, and thank goodness you've actually just brushed on it regarding the fact that, well, you have tons of people out there who have a specific skill set, but there are no jobs. You also talked about what quality people leave schools with and whether there are jobs out there for them. You were talking about the broad objective of education here. Now let's talk about that. What exactly is education in Nigeria trying to achieve? We are putting children through schools and they're coming out and there are no jobs for the courses that they read. Don't you think that we need perhaps maybe to reform the educational system to perhaps maybe take a more critical look at skills acquisition, farming, and other aspects of life, instead of churning out these kids with no jobs for them at the end of the day, years wasted, and then at the end they resort to these other means of living without proper knowledge? What's your take on that, Professor David Awurawa?
Yes, what we should reform is not just the education system. It is the entire Nigerian system. Now, I just mentioned that there are people who have skills. It is not that they read the courses that are not relevant, that way you can't find a job. There is no course today that our children read about the skills, they still don't get jobs. So many of those who are not, some are not employed because they are unemployed. But there are hundreds of thousands who are not employed, not because they are unemployable, but because the entire Nigerian system itself is dysfunctional. How many manufacturing industries do we have? How many companies are producing that will take in people who have acquired skills through education? Now, you talked about what we seek to achieve, but education is, of course, to enable Nigeria to develop themselves, to acquire knowledge, to be relevant in society and in the global community. So, I mean, that is the broad objective of the Nigerian education system. The system itself, the education system itself, needs a whole lot from the issues I've raised and the issues I've highlighted to be able to meet these objectives. There is a whole lot that is not there. Infrastructure is not there. Teacher party is there. People are paid too low. For instance, Nigerian lecturers are the poorest paid in the world, with about less than $300 a month, when the global average is about $4,000, $5,000. So all of these things are there as problems that need to be addressed before education in Nigeria can meet the set objectives. But beyond that, the system itself, the Nigerian system itself, needs an overhaul, not just the education system, so that when somebody has acquired the skill, done everything he needs to do, he will have something to be able to use those skills for. It is not everybody that will be able to become self-employed. Let us not deceive ourselves. Nigerian society cannot be different from all other countries of the world. Some will acquire skills that will enable them to be able to create jobs on their own and then employ others. There are also some who will need to work for the broad different industries, be it tech, be it production, and the rest of them. So the education system needs a reform to be able to meet the objectives. But the entire Nigerian system is, even if the education system were perfect, those problems will still be there. Because when people leave school, they will have difficulties finding a place to be able to express themselves in the skill and earn a decent living. So the Nigerian education system needs reform. The entire Nigerian system itself needs reform.
That's a task that this administration is undertaking. Let's come to Professor Yomi, who joins us from Maryland, United States. We know that funding is a big issue. It's a big conversation, even there in the U.S. And here in Nigeria, allocations less than 10%, below UNESCO's recommendation of 15 to 20%. And there have been several attempts, to push funding and, how money flows into the sector. But then what are your thoughts on the accountability of the money that has gone into funding, especially the tertiary institutions so far, and how it has been spent? And do you also believe that it's time tertiary institutions begin to, as some have recommended, seek funding from private rather than public, put the burden on the federal?
Okay, thanks. A great question. I would like to make an appeal that we don't make this only focus on tertiary institutions. And the reason is because we are reviewing the educational sector, because that's part of the challenges why we don't make progress in the educational sector in Nigeria. We focus a lot on what is happening in the universities and use that as a barometer to measure what is happening across the various sectors. What science has told us that the time when the brain of a child is most developed is between when it was born and age 2. And that if a child misses certain things in that window, the child may never recover. And so other societies, for example, are starting to place a lot of emphasis on early child education, for example, as against we are a lot of fixation on what happens in university. Well, it's important to talk about the universities, but hey, that's the end of the road. The starting point is early child education. Now, you're talking about finances, so I'll be using that prism to respond to this. There are two very important dimensions we need to position ourselves when we're talking about financing for education. The first is around the volume of money that flows into education, and the second is about the efficiency of use. So if you allow me to first talk about the volume, there's always this argument, is Nigeria spending a lot of money on education? I always tell people, we don't know how much Nigeria spends on education. And I've taught in how many universities around the world. We don't know how much Nigeria spends on education. Interestingly, part of the conversation that is happening in education financing is rather to index education finances to GDP and not to budgets, because the budget doesn't tell us so many. So the government of Nigeria, for example, allocates whatever amount to education. What if they don't release it? So we have a problem with determining the volume of money that goes to education. And please remember, education financing comes from various sources. There's a public sector that we focus a lot, but there's also a lot of private sector. People pay fees. They are private universities, they are private early child, they are public. So we have a challenge with the volume, which is a problem that can be solved. But I think the bigger challenge is the second dimension, and that's the efficiency. So you have a sector that is not getting enough money, and then the money is not efficiently used. There was a study somebody referenced some time back that if you provided an equivalent of $10 to some sectors of the Nigerian educational system, only $1 gets to education. I mean, I'm not going to mention the name of universities, but there are universities in Nigeria where their Department of Horticulture gets more funding and security than what the academic department gets. I am not going to mention universities, for example, that their annual budget of convocation ceremony runs into over 80 million, when the budget to run the department is not up to 80 million. So we have a case where we're not getting enough money, but the money is not used efficiently. And what research has found is that if we first focus on efficient utilization of the funds, then we'll likely be able to get more value from the money we want at the end of the day. Ask yourself this question. I attended a federal government college. When I got to federal government college, I mean, the one I attended, we had a principal and we had a vice principal. There are federal government colleges today that have 6 vice principals. Some have 4, some have 3. Efficiency, those are salaries. When I was an undergraduate, it was normal for the average university to have 1 vice chancellor and 1 deputy vice chancellor. Today, there are universities in Nigeria that have 3 deputy vice chancellors. All of those things are cost centers. They are part of what determines efficiency. Now, somebody may argue there's a need for it or not. That's not my argument. My argument is, do we need 3 vice chancellors? Every time a vice chancellor gives his report at convocation, part of what they describe as their development is the fact that they have created new faculty. For every new faculty created, there's a new dean, there's a new faculty officer, there's a new office, there's a new furniture, all of those things. I teach in higher education in North America. I teach in a school of business. My school of business has only 1 admin staff. for the old school. The amount my school of business generates is more than what like 10 universities make in a year. We have only one admin staff, as in one person.
Yes,
supporting the old school.
I would like to.
Why are you not going to perform well? Because of the fact that I don't have a high administrative overhead compared to when I was working in a...
Professor Yomi, just a second. I hope you can hear me. I'm trying to get your attention here because I don't want you to stray too far on something that you talked about, and I want to touch on that one now. Professor Yomi, I do agree with you that we have so much focus on the tertiary system when it comes to education in Nigeria, and perhaps that maybe that is the issue here, that we have forgotten about the foundational years and we've gone on to attack the problems that are inside of the tertiary institution and that system. One would call for a refresh button, but where do you press that refresh button? Maybe from the bottom. But then again, I also have the opinion that we have so much focus on education, academic education itself. What about skills acquisition? What about vocational studies and all the rest? Now, there is a certain issue that happens in the northern climate here in Nigeria where we have tons of out-of-school children. These children are often used by terrorists. Like in past administrations, we had issues where young girls were fitted with these explosives and they walked into concentrated areas with people, resulting in deaths. What does the present administration, Professor Yomi, what does the present administration owe to these out-of-school children that we have all across the north?
Okay, thanks. Great questions. Thanks for that question. And I personally, I feel that is our biggest responsibility in terms of the educational system. I mean, all the story about whether there's more money, I think our biggest, most important priority is to get those students to school. The current Minister of State for Education has a lot of focus around that, which is very, very commendable. It's also important for us to start to understand where these out-of-school students are. There's always this tendency for us to say they're in the north. The amount of out-of-school children in Oyo State 4 years ago is more than the number of out-of-school students in some states in the north. Oyo State is the hotbed of out-of-school children in the southwest, for example. So it's not just a northern problem, it's a problem around Nigeria. Today, if you go to Lagos and you're going in some parts of Lekki, for example, all those kids are begging for money out of. So what should we do? I think the first thing is, one, we need to create multiple learning opportunities for those children to get back to school. And for me, I think for all those states that currently have the UBEC Act says if a parent does not allow the child to go to school, that parent should be sanctioned and jailed. That's what the UBEC Act says. So I think the first thing is that there should be a mandate for all the attorney generals of the state. I believe the attorney general of the federation should call all the attorney general of the state and start to create that sanction being effective. We already have a law that says there is a punishment for you not letting your child go to school. Somebody needs to make it happen. And I'm not trying to say something that we have not done before. Atiku Abubakar was a former vice president of Nigeria. His father was sanctioned for not sending his children to school. So in northern Nigeria, over 50, 70 years ago, they were sanctioning parents for not sending their children to school. I grew up in Oyo State. We had a governor called Paul Tafa. Paul Tafa's goal was not just ensuring you go to school. If you were late to school, General Paul Tafa, Major, I don't know whether it was a colonel then, will stop on the road to Agodi and physically discipline you for getting late to school. So we first need to activate that UBEC Act. Any parent who doesn't send his child to school should get the sanction. Anybody who employs a child and doesn't send the child to school, that person should get the sanction. That's the first step. So there is the stick. Then the carrot is we need to incentivize those children going to school. And we have done it before. Osun State was a good model that we can copy. School feeding under the Governor Aregbesola government. I saw in Osun State kids that didn't want to go to school before go to school because they were guaranteed a meal.
So Professor Yomi, from what you're saying, it's implied that children are out of school. It's willful. That they're not going to school because they don't want to, not necessarily because the government hasn't provided the facilities for them to go to school. And I'm also bringing in here the question around safety, There are those who want to go to school, but then the security aspect, is it safe to go to school? So I just need you to perhaps balance it here, provide some sort of balance here. The number of out-of-school children we have, primary, secondary, is it based off of, is it willful? They don't want to go to school, or they cannot go to school?
Yeah, thanks. A very brilliant question. Thanks for asking that question. There are a number of factors. There was a research that was done by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics that gave the reasons why Nigerian students were not going to school. For some, it was financial. For some, it was because the parents wanted them to support the business. For some, it was that they were just not interested. So there are push and pull factors. Now, some of the factors are, whatever is a factor, there's a law that says a child must go to school in Nigeria. So even if you say financial reason, even if you say it's because of the law says you should go to school. Interestingly, and this is very, very important, and that's why I commend the Safe School initiative that the police is trying to currently work on in Nigeria. The safest place for a child after his home should be the school. So if our children are not going to school because it's not safe, then we have already made a lot of mistakes, because that's where should be their safest place. The safest place to keep children when they are young, apart from their home, should be the schools. So there are some people, so when you talk about what happened, for example, in the Northeast, yes, so we had cases where people couldn't go to school for very obvious reasons, schools were bombed. But now we are dealing with cases where people are not going to school because the parents say things like they want them to help them to walk. Or the parents say, for example, the child is not interested. Or, for example, we say things like the school is too far. Those factors are what is now driving, not necessarily the safety that is the case in the Northeast. And what has also been done in some part of the Northeast, that we have had cases where we now have schools in those IDPs. So nobody has an excuse. And like I said, even if you had an excuse, the law says you must go to school.
Finally, let's come to Professor David Awurawa. Please, we've been talking now. We've taken the focus away from tertiary institutions, and we're focusing on the primary schooling now. But we have a case for these children because education is not free. And unlike what it used to be back in the 80s and from before then, you could go to school even on a very, very slim budget. But these days, you need quite a sizable amount of money to take your kids to school. What does the government owe these children? Once again, I ask you from another angle.
The government owes a lot to the children and to the school system. I'll just take it from where Prof stopped, and that is the security of these children when they attend school. The Safe School initiative is being implemented, but rather slowly, and so it's not being effective. It doesn't make the impact that one expects. For instance, an aspect of the initiative is for all schools to fence, have walls to protect the children. Very few of these schools are still fenced till now. So there's a whole lot to do. Apart from more funding, there are many schools that don't have roofs. There are many schools that children don't even have ordinary seats to sit. They have to sit on the floor. And there are, very, very many of these schools. There are many schools where teachers are too paid, and so they are not motivated. If there are some of the schools that teachers in these schools don't have their children in the schools they teach, they take them to other schools, private schools, where they are better taught, for those of them that can afford it. So the government owes the schools far more funding than you're getting right now. That is very, very fundamental. Funding to provide the facilities, funding the infrastructure that is needed, funding to provide modern tools of learning. And of course, in some instances, you also need to give food. Poverty is a reality that we are facing. Poverty in Nigeria now is getting close to 70%, 7%. And so the poverty issue has to be addressed. The person who will enforce the law to force his children to go to school must also prove that when the child goes to school, he's safe. We remember that a couple of years ago when one school was attacked, the parents just took their children and took them away. And when people were trying to persuade them, they said, do you want me to go and drop my child to be killed, just like the other children were killed? So the issue of security, it is extremely fundamental. The implementation of the state initiative is too slow. and the efforts that are put into it are too little and ineffectual. That needs to be addressed. People will not take their children to schools if they are not convinced that the children will be safe. And so the government owes, owes the school system, the primary, secondary, of course, at all levels, but now especially primary, secondary, all of this. In addition to that, the question has to be answered. Is government perceiving education as business or social service? At least at those very low levels, education should be perceived as social system. And that is even how it is in countries that already were developed. That is why you see somebody relocate to the UK or the US, and he calls you and tells you that, well, my child is going to school for free. Because those societies know that if those children are not trained, if they are not doing that basic education, there will be a problem to that society in later years. So the government owes all of this to the school system: funding, security, motivation, and better pay for the teachers, multi-dimensional. And of course, resolving these problems also require multi-dimensional approach. And when we say government, when I'm saying government in this context, I'm not only talking about federal government, I'm talking about federal, state, and local governments. All of them have responsibilities as far as the education system is concerned, especially primary and secondary education. So all of these things that the government owes the education system if we really want it to be functional and meet the set objectives.
Well, thank you very much, Professor David Awurawo. Thank you very much indeed. Also, Professor Yomi Fawemi for joining us, educationist and also lecturer at the University of Lagos, respectively. Thank you, gentlemen. We've had such a robust conversation on education. Thank you. Now, we have yet another correspondent here at News Central who will be joining us to talk about the education system in Nigeria. Only this time, she'll be, well, letting us hear it from the horse's mouth themselves. Omolola Ololade joins us right now. Omolola, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Mazino. We're presently, in front of University of Lagos to sample student opinion on the quality of education that they have received so far since President Tinubu assumed office. And, I have one of the students here with me. She's Deborah Inla. She says she's 400 level student of, the Department of Law here in the University of Lagos. Please come.
Hi, good afternoon.
Okay, so what has been, the quality of education you have received in the past, I wouldn't say past 4 years, but in the past 2 years since President Tinubu assumed office? What are some of the policies that you think have favored you, and what are the ones that you think haven't been so favorable to you?
Okay, so far, to be so unbiased, I'm going to say that I like this administration. I mean, I gained admission during the last administration before President Tinubu, right? And I think we went on a couple of strikes, and ever since President Tinubu has assumed office, we haven't gone on any strike. I think for any undergraduates, that is the first thing. They don't want to go on strike. You just want your 4 years to be 4 years. I'm studying a 5-year course. I just want my 5-year course to my 5-year course, and yeah. For me, I really love that. And then I think I also like the idea of the student loan. I know that there could be a lot of controversy around that and everything. That also sees that is also is concerned about the indigent students, right? People who are not able to, come to school, afford school fees and all of that. There are a couple of people that are in their house that gain admission to school and half their family are not eating. Do you understand? And then they have to struggle or to work. So with the student loan, they could take it and then sort some bills and all of that. Yeah. So far,
but talking about the school fees, you'll agree with me that since the office, he assumed office, a lot of schools, tertiary institutions have increased, and we've seen protests. So are you now saying that in that area you don't have any problem?
Okay, that was what I said. I don't want this to be. I know this is a very controversial issue, and I really don't like to talk about controversial issues. I don't like to give you my opinions. I don't want people to come for me. But personally, I'm going to say that I know that there has been increase in school fees, and I know that with the economic situation of the country, we can't deny the fact that it's not really stable, right? But I'm saying that even with the increase, there were some policies that were in place to at least help with the issues that we have in the economy sector. Otherwise, I pointed out the student loan. Okay, they increase school fees. You could take the option of a loan. People do it in other countries, so we can do that as well in Nigeria. Yeah.
Okay, so apart from, you know, the fees now, talking about, because I spoke to some student, but, you know, with the report I did, I think some few weeks back, like a few weeks ago, I came to Unilag and I spoke to some student, and one of the, you know, main issues they mentioned was hostels, that the hostels haven't been good, you know, the renovations work still ongoing. Now, despite the fact that you have to, like, increase hostel fees, even the hostels are still not in good shape despite renovations. What are your thoughts?
Okay, first of all, thank you so much. Again, this is a controversial issue. I'm going to say the last semester, this is the second semester for the University of Lagos. I'm a student, right? The last semester we had online lectures. And then this semester we're having a physical lecture. So with that, students have to move to the hostels and they're getting to school. So let me first of all state that the way hostel works, I think in most federal universities, it has to do with, what's it called, balloting. There's a balloting system. So you ballot, you apply. Now, for Unilag, you have to apply, then they'll give it to you. So it's like a raffle draw. Do you get what I mean? So you have to ballot for hostels and then to get it. We have a lot of students in school. Like each faculty has like thousands of students there. It is not possible that the hostels available on campus, if we are being truthful to ourselves, will accommodate everybody. It's not possible. And so that's why they put the balloting system in place. So students that are not able to, get hostels can, look for other options. I mean, in front of us is a private hostel here, right? And then other options outside. Now, this is not to say that some students don't still suffer from it, right? I just think personally that there are some things that I feel like they could put in place. For instance, give priority to first 100-level students and maybe final year students. I'm speaking of year 5 and year 4. Let there not even be any form of balloting. Let it be that definitely they will all get hostels. I just think that, but it's not possible that with the hostels that we have here, we'll accommodate everybody. It's not possible. And I also think that it's not even hygienic and it's not even healthy. You have things like squatting, floating, and all of that. For a formal room, you're having like 8 people in a room. That will cause suffocation. That will cause a lot of things. It's not healthy to the students. So, yeah.
So finally, sorry to cut you. Finally, besides accommodation issues, because of time, what are in your words, or to you, what do you think can be done to help improve the quality of learning, or generally the education system here in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I must say first of all that our leaders are. I'm going to speak for my school. I think I've seen. There's one hostel that I got when we wanted to write exams last semester. I balloted for it and I got it, and I saw that they had renovated it. I think that our leaders for my school are doing a great job. Maybe we are not where we are supposed to be now, but at least I think I'm already seeing a lot of effort that they've been making. So we cannot first even ignore that fact. So like I said, they also have to look at the welfare of the students. They have to look at it more. What is it that we have to do better? What are we doing that we have to change? Daily new students get admitted into the university. Do we need to look at some bushes inside the school? Should we expand? Should we build more? Should we speak to alumni to come and fund it and all of that? We have Bajabi Amela Hostel here, So these are the things I just see that they should just look into. But so far, I think we've been seeing their hands. Yoruba was saying real war. Not like they're just sitting there not doing anything. If they're not doing anything, I would definitely say it. Yeah. So
thank you very much. Thank you. So that's it from Deborah Anyela, who has spoken about the experience. There's a lot of, if you ask me, especially from the report, you see that it's all not been all bad. Yes, we have the bad side of the education system, but we also have the good side, which of course the lady has spoken about. But can we do more? Of course, yes, the education system still have a long way to go. The old administration, they have a long way to go when it comes to Nigeria's education system. Back to you, Mazino.
Omolola, thank you very much. For a moment there, we thought you weren't going to come back to us at all. But thank you very much. And I think Deborah for Student Union President, because she touched on everything. All that was left was mining in Nigeria. But that's great. Thank you very much, Omola.
So I guess
a very interesting conversation there with that young lady. She knew all about everything.
Yes, Omola for president.
President.
But President Tinubu has to finish that again. Tenure first. 2 more years to go. 2 years in. It's been quite the breakdown.
Yeah, it has been. we've touched on everything from energy to what else did we touch on?
Energy, security, education.
Education.
Yes, that's where we're coming from.
I want to say thank you very much to everybody who stuck with us, at least this team, since 11 o'clock this morning. There's still more on the scorecard for the president that will carry on till the end of today, I bet.
That's right. But first, we head over to Judith Atibi, who brings us the news. I am Joanna Mustafa.
And my name is Mazino Appeal. Thanks for watching.